Magic Without Fears Hermetic podcast. I'm your host, Frater C. For more and exclusive episodes, visit magicwithoutfears.com. Thank you for your support. Welcome to Magic Without Fears Hermetic podcast. I'm your host, Frater C. For more and exclusive episodes, visit magicwithoutfears.com. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, so the Honograph article that drops today, basically he essentially is making an argument to rename, I did mention this before yesterday, to rename religious studies departments as spirituality studies.
Great.
Which is sort of a big deal to propose that. And he doesn't come out right and say it, because he also then argues, and this is an article he just dropped in Religion, in the quarterly, in the journal. Journal Religion, which is the journal for religious studies. And he says, because we can't just do it for marketing or to grab quick attention because of the trend or the vogue. And he critiques Jordan Peterson and Harari and the other scholars from art history, psychology, philosophy, and theology for basically becoming the most famous commentators on religious studies, as opposed to actual religious scholars, because they don't actually know what's up to date. And he refers to people like Jordan Peterson as amateurs commenting on the main stage about a field that they're way out of date with. Like, they're still reading Mircea Eliade and the Eranos school, and or even Joseph Campbell, which is just, it's almost 100 years out of date from what religious scholarship is actually thinking. So he was saying, let's rescue his departments, get funding and reclaim it by maybe considering calling it spirituality. Essentially, that's what he's saying.
Interesting.
But he can't really come out and just say that. But the crucial thing he says is we can't do it for marketing purposes and just to get our budgets reapproved and increased in students. We have to do it out of an actual passion by actually studying what really matters to us, instead of just what just interests us and we think might intrigue students. It has to really, we have to tell a better story. If we want our story as religious scholars to be heard above the, you could call it, I guess, the appeal of the versions we're getting told from Harari or Peterson, we have to tell a better story. We can't just bitch and moan. And that's what he says. Interesting, isn't it?
That's great. I mean, we're at an interesting time now where in universities there's actually more spiritual studies happening. I mean, there are actual UC classes where you can study the old crafts and the old ways, old spirituality. And I think nowadays people have more of an interest than ever.
Well, and it's always been there. Even Stephen Flowers, I think, said that at university, this would have been a long time ago when he was at university, he had courses on Kabbalah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a perfect time, too, because, when you're in the university system, you're constantly, morphing your mind and bouncing around ideas. It's a great time to introduce an idea like Kabbalah, I think.
Yeah. Of course, studying the history of the thing is a bit different than studying the practice.
True. But it's intriguing on its own part. I mean, some people spend their whole lives just studying that and don't actually even take part in it. It's an interesting... Yeah. I think that's always been the case with armchair, workers versus people that actually want to get in and do the work itself.
Do you think we could expand the definition from practical to armchair to a third and say that there's a difference between armchair occultists and scholars of esotericism?
Totally. You could be a scholar as a mechanic, and you can know how everything works in a car. It doesn't make you a mechanic. You could know how everything works. You could know the origins, how the physics behind it, the math behind it. But if you've never put a wrench in your hand and taken apart an engine, you're not a mechanic.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good analogy to put into the work of magic. Some people, that's enough for them, just to understand correspondence.
Who needs to do Frater Ashen Hassan's work when you can just read the book?
Depends on what you want. I mean, for some...
Well, that's the definition, really, of an armchair magician.
Yeah.
Whereas a scholar of esotericism, they don't read Ashen Hassan even Tony Fuller, for that matter.
Well,
really.
some would. Some authors, like for example, Jake Stratton Kent.
They would see that as contemporary.
He's
primary
both an
source
actual
magician.
Practicing magician and goetic spirit conjurer, but at the same time, he also wrote Geosophia, and he studies the history and origins of goetic spirits. It's actually pagan roots, big time.
Yeah. You just have to be careful at academic conferences and in papers to distinguish between primary source material and secondary source material.
Totally.
So, like for a practicing ritualist, Ashen Hassan has now basically become primary source material, or secondary source material. Sorry. Right?
But I think those authors, they could really care less what anybody thinks.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. But it's just a sort of an understanding of categorizing the information, right? Because in an academic setting, you're not talking about people actually practicing this stuff really outside the context of studying the people who practice that stuff, right?
Well,
it's a level of discourse removed.
And even further, there's folks that are scholars on it that also don't believe in it. They're just
most of them
obsessed
don't.
with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In the Association for the Study of Esotericism, which is the academic association that and then there's the ESWE, ESSWE in Europe. Most of them don't teach it. Like Hanegraaff, Wouter Hanegraaff doesn't teach this stuff. It was my protege, Daniel, who first showed him in Amsterdam when he was doing his master's with Hanegraaff, the LBRP, with Jeremy Crow. Jeremy Crow was there and was a student with Daniel Klein, and they showed him. So it's crazy to think that I found out that Hanegraaff first saw an LBRP from my pupil.
Interesting.
And he had never seen it, right? It's not of any real interest to him, and he wasn't particularly...
Well, and even if
he was surprised to see someone do it in a real way, because I think scholars often forget that there's people taking this spirituality serious, because it's our spirituality.
Well, and as a scholar, you risk, credibility if you actually come out and say...
Big time. But that's slightly changing.
Yeah.
With people like, sort of with Fuller. I mean, he's in academia, you can almost... historians are not considered the prime people, they're considered above scholars of religion, but not much, unfortunately, because there's a pecking order in academia.
Well, and it makes you wonder how many scholars actually do practice, but just don't talk about it.
That's something we've just talked about in academic circles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I almost got to have a chance to talk about with Angela Voss the other year in Canterbury, because I knew she has some interest in some things. She writes a lot about divination and the power. She has a great essay on the power of the magic of statues, the significance of statues. I'd actually love to get her thoughts on what's going on right now culturally with removing. You showed me today Gandhi. They took down statue of Gandhi.
As of right now in Ghana, Africa, they were removing a Gandhi statue for alleged racist roots. And
I don't know if he was racist. He was definitely sexist.
I think a lot of the gurus we find, in that we find that a lot, from Osho to the list goes on and on. I know a lot of devotees that have gone through these orders,
Dude, that
very
stuff's-
peaceful orders, to only to find out that the guru is.
That stuff's alive and well, man. A couple of years ago, my aunt called me up out of the blue, and she's like, if a parent grabs their child's ass, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a whoopsie.
What?
I was like, it's a whoopsie? She's like, yes. It's not like it's sex. It's just a whoopsie.
Oh my goodness!
It's my aunt. She teaches high school.
Wow.
This stuff is, and I come from a radically liberal family that you
Mhm.
think would be up in arms with this stuff, but they're just like, shush, shush.
Weird. There's so many things that are alive and well that people don't talk about, right? I think that, for
We're
example,
talking about it now.
yeah. Well, for example, all the unrest that's happening right now. The argument is that it's years and years of unraveling, and all it took was, a few events to set everything into motion.
I'm moving this closer to you because you talk quieter than me.
Got it.
I've been getting my volume up doing these lectures and classes all the time, every day. And sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I just said, I think obviously there's pent up aggression, and like we were just talking about hidden things like that, the shush in your family. I think that so much society shushes things. You know what I mean?
It's not just my family, bro. I think it's a lot of families. you just might not get that phone call.
Totally.
But
Totally.
they're thinking it. It's a weird time, man. I do look forward to that, leaving our culture a bit more if possible.
Yeah,
You
it's evolution.
Come on, people.
I think that of our generation, we didn't really see a lot of this kind of thing. The parents of the '60s and '70s, they grew up in it. They protested the war.
Are they going to start burning all the early James Bond films?
Well, it's already happening.
Yeah, Gone with the
history
Wind.
continues to erase itself and censor itself.
Did you hear about the digital book burning that's going on?
Yeah, the
by
NPR.
Amazon?
Yeah.
Amazon's being accused of digital book burning because they're banning certain books and
Yeah.
deciding who reads what, and that's not very cool.
No, we run the risk. And I see even a lot of occultists talking about it right now and jumping on the bandwagon.
Really?
And I find myself, at what point does occult books become the next thing that we burn? And then are you going to stand up and fight for your freedom?
Yeah, folks, be careful for what you cheer for, because they always come for you eventually. Almost always in history.
Well, I think I can't remember the quote, but the gentleman was a German, and he was I believe a clergyman at the time, and he said that at first they did this, and then they did that, and then I didn't care.
Bonhoeffer was a really amazing theologian and German Lutheran clergyman, I believe.
Yeah.
And he was hung just before the end of the war. They kept delaying his
This
hanging,
guy
but then they
fled,
hung him right
but
before.
the quote is something to the effect of, at first they were after the businesses, and I didn't care because I wasn't a businessman. Then they were after the Jewish people. I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't care. Then they came after the church, and by that time there was nobody to help, no one to stand up and say no. And I think that that's what's crawling into the skin of a lot of people in the nation when they see everything that's happening. Personally, my own opinion is if tearing down all the statues, eliminates racism in our country, in whatever form is left, I think that's great if it works.
Could you imagine if all we need to do is tear down the statues and then racism's gone?
Yeah. And meanwhile, we're racking up millions and billions of dollars in damages and everything else in these communities that really need a lot of these institutions. In some communities, the Target's the only place that you can actually shop. And when that burns down, that's 300 workers that don't have a job now. I heard that Walmart, for example, in Chicago, is not planning on returning. They're not going to rebuild. They're going to relocate it to another city. So there's all these implications. Look at NASCAR. You see their response? NASCAR, of all institutions, basically got rid of their Confederate flag, which is fine. Who really cares, right? But what they did is
that's an American issue. I'll let you guys handle that.
Yeah, they got rid of the Southern flag, and then they said, they stand in solidarity. And I'm thinking of the fans of NASCAR people. If there are any, I mean, there is always been kind of some hidden racism in NASCAR, and it's a total white person sport. I mean,
Well, this it's such a big deal about that. They're like, no, we have a black guy, we have a black driver,
totally.
and you know what? I was talking to my mom just the other day, and some of this stuff came up, right? And I was like, yeah, but mom, you went to high school, you grew up in West Vancouver. That's like so white bread racist. It's not funny. Like if you jog down Marine Drive in West Vancouver, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, Malkovich, they all have houses there. You will smell in like 6 blocks of jogging every one of the most expensive perfumes on the planet. Like thousands of dollars for a bottle, that sort of stuff. And she was like, we weren't racist at all. We had a black person and we all really liked her. And I just stayed silent, and she's like, oh, I see your point.
I'm lucky enough to have through hip hop.
When you can or are choosing to count the number of people of color you have, like that's where you see some stuff going on, right?
Totally.
These communities are not open. First of all, we don't have actually many black people in Canada, but we have a lot of First Nations people. And you don't see them in those schools, not at all, not a fucking chance.
Well, they're usually funded. I mean, you have a better chance, believe it or not, economically coming from like Kenya and coming into the U.S. than you do if you grew up here in LA.
It's amazing.
It's interesting.
Yeah, maybe amazing is the wrong word.
No, I mean it is. It's, you know.
It's. I think we're forgetting the opportunities that are still provided by the Western world.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is that like I have a couple friends that came from Ghana, and they come here and they're like, this is like heaven. Like anything is better than going back to where they were.
Yeah, and you like even you or I mean, if you sold your kids and traded your wife away, you could just move to Denmark and go get a PhD for free in any subject you want for free.
Totally.
They'll even help you pay for your living expenses. You're like, but I'm a foreigner. They'll be like, that's why we have the English programs. It's like, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So no one's stopping you in the West.
No,
It's not like freaking China.
I think that's the problem. Is it's so self-driven that if you don't catch the self-driven motivation of the U.S., then you fall into the system. The system is made for people to be self-motivated based on our capitalism.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you look at technology. I mean, why is the U.S. so insanely, trend-setting when it comes to like technology?
Because of the factories in China.
No, because of entrepreneurism.
Yes, of course.
You don't see that in a lot of other countries.
No, one of my mentors is an Italian entrepreneur. He mentored me through a lot of marketing and stuff, and they hate entrepreneurialism. Is like being almost, you may as well have a picture of Mussolini in your house.
Yeah.
I mean, there are bad people. It's like, what's wrong with just having enough? Why do you need more? That's the mentality in Italy.
And
so now he lives in Dubai.
That's a valid concern too. I mean, like, are we ready for some of the technologies we have, like AI and deepfake technology? I mean, the fact that you could frame me with your phone using deepfake technology with my face and say something.
But wouldn't it be nice if people start making high quality deepfakes, like of you and I giving amazing lectures?
Well, there's always the flip side of the technology. I mean, look at what Facebook did, and Twitter. I mean, Twitter's become the outlet for the president, and I mean that's just insane. I mean, these technologies have also equaled out the playing field too. I mean, if you go to the poorest city in the United States, we all got the same phone. We all got, you know what I mean? There's certain technologies where it's everywhere. The poorest people in this country have an iPhone.
Yeah.
And
I've said this before, we've actually, with the iPhones and with the smartphones, surpassed the best technology that we envisioned in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like, remember Picard's like, it has all of Shakespeare's works. And we're like, today we'd be like, that's it? Well, that's what it's got?
Remember the encyclopedia, right? I mean, the phone and Wikipedia just blew that out of the water. No one has an encyclopedia. So I remember when we were kids, everybody had the big Britannica set, and you were looking up words left and right. And
well, it's online now.
Well, you even got Google spell checking you, and even grammar checking you. Have you seen the new one?
I don't let them do that because their grammar's worse than mine.
They have a new one that just got integrated. They want me to use a certain style
of grammar, and if I use a certain style of grammar in a certain place, it's for a reason. It's for a motherfucking reason.
Yeah, exactly. But it just goes to tell you how much they're trying to improve the writing skills of the nation because people don't write anymore.
Like if I say thereof, I'm dog whistling. I just learned what dog whistles are. I know I'm way behind the times. Canadians don't do this dance. America, we do a different dance. We do compelled speech and we sue comedians. That's what we do in Canada. Yeah, but we fix your broken arm for free. So good and bad.
You can't have it all.
Yeah. We'll fix your arm for free, but you gotta say "j'ai" if the person wants.
We
to
should
say.
make a list. You go to Denmark for the free education. You go to Canada for your broken arm.
Yeah.
You come to USA to be
Well,
an
what's his name?
entrepreneur.
Mr. Bowling for Columbine did that whole thing where he went around and did a positive documentary. He went to all the countries and looked at what's good in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
We need more of that.
he's like, "Can we invade your country?" And he had a flag. Well, Michael Moore, right?
Oh, yeah.
I actually got to hang out with him after a writers' conference in 1996.
Wow.
Before anyone knew who he was. His complaint was that the book he had just put out, they graphically used digital technology to remove a blemish on his face, and he was upset by that. He's like, "That's not my thing." And this is years before he was famous. This is all he had done back then was like Canadian Bacon with John Candy. Right, that great film, amazing film.
Yeah,
I hated it at the time, but now as I'm older, I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah, but if I say thereof, I'm actually sort of dog whistling to people who are fans of that period of writing, and making a joke at the same time. I'm making
Totally.
a joke.
Yeah.
I'm also, I'm saying also the content I just wrote that I ended with the thereof it's a joke. It's a fucking joke.
Yeah, and that's the problem with
When I was 18, it wasn't a joke. I thought I was being like hardcore legit.
Mhm.
But that's because all I was reading was like Dion Fortune and W.B. Yeats and Mathers Crowley, all the,
Sure.
yeah, Hermann Hesse, those early translations of Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
What did you read when you were a teenager?
I think what started me was the book Self-Realization. It's about Zen Buddhism.
Oh yeah.
That's what kind of first opened up my mind into esoterics. But my
Yeah, for
my
me,
upbringing.
it was Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
My upbringing was different because my mom and dad both went to Catholic high school and were raised by strict Catholics. I was baptized Catholic, and the minute I was born and baptized, because my grandmother really, had to happen. Like this had to happen for me. They moved away, and my mom and dad are not practicing, any religion. I think they had such a bad experience in the Catholic high schools.
Yep.
So my brother actually was an altar boy.
I heard that story.
My brother was an altar boy, went through did all the catechisms and stuff. And for me, my parents just decided to let me figure out life on my own as far as spirituality goes. So it was actually better for me because I didn't have a lot of unweaving to do. I meet a lot of folks that came in with Christian backgrounds or this backgrounds, and they had a lot of trouble navigating the occult because so many things they had to fight based on their previous knowledge and what they learned. So for me, I looked into everything, and the self-realization Buddhist thing was the first thing that really got my brain like, whoa, there's so much more to everything in life than what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And I think that naturally led me into the occult. I mean, to me, it was never a dark, scary thing. It was like the way.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing for young people out there to hear.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Catholicism and Christianity tries to do. It tries to navigate you through the occult. I mean, it's just under a different name, right? It's the raising the individual and like for example, in Catholic schools, you actually understand when you become a man because of the rites that happen to you. And nowadays, nobody has. It's like you're 18, you get out of high school, and all right. And a lot of people don't really have that marking in their life that they've grown up, that you're now an adult. For example, in Native communities, they'll send you off, and you got to go fend for yourself for 2 nights or 3 nights, come back, and when you come back from that experience, you've been initiated, you're a changed person, you're now a grown-up. I think that the U.S. doesn't have anything like that. If anything, it's a race to be a kid as long as you can, right? And people are afraid of death so much. I mean, look at the way people look nowadays. Like a 70, 80-year-old woman does makeup like they're 30 or 40, and you can't tell how old anybody. Everyone's got dyed hair. Everyone is so afraid to be what they are naturally,
Yeah.
It's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, we could get into the gender thing, but that's close to home, and we are at your home, and there's multiple levels of meaning to that. But
Well, I think that privacy is kind of gone out the window, and there's privacy is to be valued. I think. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, the choice of gender wasn't even there. There was so much stuff going on in your brain when you're going to school, girls and everything else, that you're like, I couldn't even imagine, like, am I even a boy? Like that's perplexing, and I'm not negating anyone that has that. In fact,
when
my
I was
son
like
is a
13,
transgender.
I looked, well, basically 13 to 28. People usually thought I looked like an ugly girl. Like, people have written blog posts about running into me on tour and described me, saying that at first they thought I was just an ugly girl.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, I gave you a T-shirt and a free CD when you picked us up when our VW broke down, because we had one of the hippie vans, 73. Yeah, it broke down on the. Oh, dude, like when the battery and the lights died, because we fixed it and they didn't reconnect the alternator to the battery, so we ground to a halt on the. Oh yeah, we're not. I just remember we're not in fucking Canada. I was like about to be like, dude, it's on this freeway going through the Rockies, like out of Hope, and then I just realized we're in fucking California. Hi folks, coming to you from California, Sebastopol. So yeah, but if you knew what I'm talking about, like the train tracks. So I get out of the van, I stop. It's dead of night. You can't see shit. The lights were flickering, going down these winding roads in cave tunnels and stuff. And we stop, wheel off the road. I get out. There's this much, an inch and a half from the front tires to a cliff going down about 400 feet down to train tracks and a rocky. That's how close we came to dying.
Mm-hmm.
And someone picked us up and then wrote this blog post. So, if someone had phrased to me like the issue of am I a girl back when I was 13, when I started looking that way, I guess, because it was kind of the undiagnosed celiac disease had my body fucking getting warped.
Gotcha.
Like I was not developing like a normal, not only just like a normal man, but like a normal human being with that kind of undiagnosed immune disorder, right?
Sure,
You're absorbing 5% of nutrients tops. So you eat a bowl of broccoli and you got daggers in your stomach.
Wow.
It was shocking to me. I would always be like, that thing when after you eat and you have massive sharp pains in your stomach, and my buddies would all be like, no, no, we feel great after we eat. I'm like, I think something's wrong with me. But everyone would be like, no, you just need to eat less candy and less soda.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of all that was, but
No, you were saying how at that age you couldn't imagine having to.
right, being told that I don't have a gender and I need to choose one. I don't know what I said. And and again, I have lots of trans friends and have had my whole life. It's never been something even. Wasn't an issue, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the
about it.
idea is that some things.
Of course, you're dealing with it on another level.
Yeah, no, I mean, my son is trans, so I mean, I'm totally sensitive to it, and he's my son. I refer to him as my son, and we've even my youngest kids have been trained to kind of use the right name and the right gender, and they get it. To them, it's old news now. It is what it is.
Do you think this is just like the results of cosplaying? I know that probably sounds so.
No, I think that
I tried to be insightful and funny, but I think I might have just come off transphobic.
I do believe that there are legitimate cases of people who literally from the day of birth,
of course,
all the way their life realize like I don't belong in this body. But
so
I think
many
all
old
of us do that
traditions
too.
of souls being in the so-called wrong body. Like this goes way back to the Greek temples. I mean, didn't they have Chris Bennett covers this in one of his documentaries, I think, or maybe it was someone, I don't know. I've been consuming so much content these days, who knows where it comes from, but like there was a sacred roles of these people who
Oh, in some cultures, I mean, look at Thailand. I mean, the lady boys of Thailand go back long.
India
long,
still
long
has three
time.
genders. They always have had three genders, male, female, and other. And I don't see why the rest of us couldn't just be like, yo, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I think I spoke to you a little bit last night. It's not all just pretty,
Last night's sort of a blur.
well, for example, when my son started going through the process of becoming a boy, a lot of people don't realize that there's bullying in these communities where the kids that have had more testosterone or done certain surgeries actually think they're more of the gender than their friends that are trying to become that gender, and there's actually hazing.
Right, bullying within
Which is
people
just, it blew my
transition. That's
mind
what-
when my
that-
kid comes
yeah, you
home
mentioned
crying
that.
from school.
Because other trans kids are saying
some
you're less trans than us.
Well, because it's basically because the parents were more progressive about the decision making. They were like, hey, if you think you're a boy right now,
And
at
cut off your
13
breast
years
right
old,
away.
let's just go ahead and
Yeah,
do it.
they're doing it
And,
just like that.
and me and Kristen, you know, we obviously want biology to take place, and when you're an adult, if you want to change it, you can.
Because I think we do need to listen to people who are regretting, and there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them.
There's a lot that don't regret, and we need to listen to everybody. We definitely need to listen more these days. In
Definitely.
general, listen. Jesus Christ.
Well, I have another friend that had a gender assignment years ago, and I think the one thing to take home from my conversations with her is that even after the surgeries, even after the estrogen and everything else that she took, she still doesn't feel comfortable in her body. So it's not like all of a sudden you get this operation and you're like, yeah, I'm done. It's over.
not that easy, is it?
It becomes a whole lifelong learning lesson, which essentially is what the occult is. You're learning who the hell you are in a way.
I like, and nicely done how you brought it back to the occult. I didn't necessarily need to depart into your personal experience with
No, that's fine.
with stuff, but I think it's powerful to talk about it, especially
It is, because
when we talk about it, because you and I both talk about it from the point of view, I think, of just learning. We're learning.
yeah,
We're
definitely
learning about our
learning.
fellow human beings, and that's all it is.
And it's some things I think should be left in the closet, so to speak, your personal life choices. I mean, it's very common nowadays that you run into somebody that says, this is my name, this is my gender, this is my sexuality, and it's like, whoa, like, I just want to meet you. I don't know that I have to know all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a kind of a
few
raw
times I
example.
have pointed out to people, like, I think it's not necessarily fair or even appropriate, maybe, to assume that I want to know about your sexuality. When I meet an average straight person,
Mhm.
the last thing we talk about is our sexuality, and we don't know if each other's straight because we don't care. It's not a point. So there is a weird thing going on where it's like, I need to identify who I am to. I need you to know who I am. And moreover, in Canada, we have this problem of, if you don't then refer to me the exact way I say, it's not just a sign of disrespect. I can have you arrested and sue you in court, and I will fucking win. That's where I get like, Jesus Christ, this is a problem, man. Compelled speech is a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not a gender issue, it's a freedom issue, and I guess that people call that I guess I'm sounding like a certain kind of person there, but I'm not.
Inclusion.
It's
an inclusion situation because look, it's grown.
We got
it went from bi
digital book burning and
to LGBTQ queer plus.
that's fine.
And now it's actually breaking apart because
Because there's
people
fighting with it.
people think that the original gays and lesbians aren't getting the attention because of all of these other flavors that have been added.
Well, there's
to
the
fold.
popular saying, which is actually hard to deal with, which is that people are saying, and some people said that the trans movement is actually a men's right movement. Because there's all these men who have snuck into things like sports and stuff like this, and really it's just maybe men who, some of the guys out there are just dudes who want attention.
Those were some of the extreme examples that
They're outliers for sure.
It's terrible. I mean, you see these guys that, they're boxers and they convert to female and then they win the whole league and they beat the crap. And
there's recently a ruling that has set a precedent that's going to be quite significant.
And it might be historic and stuck in
Dude,
my roots,
if
but
I
seeing
saw
a woman
someone
get
like
beat up
in
by a man
the
is
octagon
bothers
beating
me.
the shit out of my sister and knowing that they had, I would be bloodthirsty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's
I was
people
like,
taking
wait,
advantage
the person
of it.
who just beat up my sister's actually had a male body for 25, 30 years before this. I would be fucking furious.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's my fucking sister.
And that's
man.
what's blurring the lines. The legal systems aren't ready for it. They weren't.
No. Well, the leaders of countries generally don't even understand the internet. That whole Zuckerberg testimony really showed that they don't understand.
Yeah.
They're like, but how do you make money? He's like, Senator, we run ads in between drinking water like a robot.
Yeah.
That can't consume fluids.
Totally.
Need oil change.
And that's another segue there. I mean, without the internet, would all this be the way that it is?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and we'll get back to that. So, okay, I don't know if we remember where we were, but That's okay. To go back to your Christian point, you turn things back to the occult, and then we somehow got wrapped up in the modern.
Well, I think that that's
politics.
really what the occult can be used for is really finding out the true nature of yourself. You know, so much of this gender experiment stuff is still, I think, based on ego. You know, it's trying to figure out who you are. And, you know, for example, my son's gone through, I think, 3 different name changes in the process. You know, and the whole family has learned to use the proper names and address him the way he wants to be addressed.
That's interesting, actually.
And we do it
I went
because-
through all these name changes, most people know, when I was around your son's age.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because my mom got into Kabbalion numerology, which nothing, no
That's
relationship to the Kabbalah, and decided to do this to me. And was like, if you have a problem with it, you can do what you want when you're 18. Because parents can just willy-nilly change their kids' names
Sure.
when they're young. But now, it's kids dictating to the parents what their name's going to be. That's such a shift from when you and I grew up in the 80s.
Well, I mean, something like, for example, my last name is Grossman, and like I thought growing up, like I was gonna get a bunch of heat. And early on, people would be like Grossman,
German?
Gross.
Oh, yeah.
You know, little kid, right?
Yeah.
But it's a name I lived with, and I wasn't like, I'm going to change my name, and it didn't really actually affect me much in my life at all.
Dude, you know what my childhood name was? Like my first last name, before all the name changes? Do you know? Precious.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that awesome?
That's great.
I loved it, actually. I was so choked when my mom first changed my name. But she said it would cure me of my depression with our dad being AWOL with this abusive woman, right? She's like, this will, you know, I was suicidal at 12.
Wow.
And she's like, this will fix you. And I'm like, sure. Because if you're actually depressed and suicidal, you don't give a fuck.
Yeah, well, that could be a fresh start. I get it. I mean, depression's a real thing, and it exists even in the most successful people. I mean, I think a lot of people hide, you know, that feeling down about themselves. You know, and name changes could be part of the process of restarting, rebirthing. You know, kind of like the phoenix.
I think it just made me weird because I was already I was gothy.
Mm-hmm.
I played like mind's eye theater, improv, acting kid, you know.
Well, it's interesting. You're making me think because, you know, my side project is heavy metal, and I've been in the heavy metal scene for, you know, about 15 years now.
Yeah.
And in that scene, the occult is everywhere, but very few people actually
They don't
know
really
what it
what's going on
is,
with
what
it.
the symbols are.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to be ingrained in a culture that's just full of occult symbolism, but very few people have actually studied the occult. In fact, members of my band, you know, are like know that I'm into occultism, and they're like, "Whoa," and you're kind of like, "Whoa!" I mean, every band that we have is talking about this and that, you know, devils and demonology and this and that, but very few, all the band names, all the references, but very few people have ever picked up Agrippa and actually read, you know, any of these books and know anything about it. It's just subculture, and I think that that's really what the community of gays, lesbians, transgender, queer is become. It's kind of, it reminds me of like punk rock when I was a kid. It's like it's its own subculture. You've got tons of support behind it. Everything that's not included is kind of anti, and it creates this, yeah, I'm with the group. And I think we all long to be in groups. I mean, that's why gangs are so prevalent. Orders have been with us in fraternities forever, because people want to belong. I mean, being the solitary occultist isn't necessarily the most satisfying of goals, you know, for...
Oh, no. As soon as I, you know, had made my way through Cunningham's Solitary Practitioner and R.J. Stewart's Celtic Magic, I was like, all right, I'm a druid witch, I need a coven. And I talked to my buddies, and we had a bro coven with, it was me and Dana Klein, and then he got Dave French in, who was a Satanist, which meant he owned a copy of LaVey's book and clearly had a good metabolism, could handle masturbating 4 times in a row to open his circle. And I was like, I don't know about him. He's like, no, he's a good guy, you'll see. And we did a lot of amazing celebrations of the Sabbats and just some other stuff. Of course, I always did my rituals and my Sabbat work for spiritual transformation and development, and they always did it to, you know, Dan was always about like sexual potency, and Dave French was like getting a girl and stuff. That's what they did, but that's what didn't matter. We'd create, you know, elementaries and like your little fairies. We'd be out in the forest on Samhain and like dripping candle wax that we were holding in a grove out in the bushwhacked wilderness from midnight to like 5 a.m. We'd be pouring candle wax on our hands just so that they would warm a bit. That's how cold it would be in the rain as we're like creating this energetic, elementary familiar to work for us. Because I was about to head off to Vienna and stuff, and we wanted the spirit to go between us. So we were like, oh, it's got to be really strong. And that's what we knew how to do. That's all we knew how to do. And right away I needed a group. And then they weren't hardcore enough for me, and so eventually I got into the Golden Dawn.
The group mentality is an interesting one, right? Because at the end of the day, we're doing solitary work for the most part, but there's still this longing to be with other minds that are thinking like you. Because once you...
The work was so much more powerful. The three of us worked on our psychic development, clairsentience or clairvoyance, and like they were both seers. They could see stuff. If I visualized a colored ball in my hands, they would look over and they would nail it off. After a year of working together, nailed the color 100% of the time. That's crazy. That doesn't make sense scientifically. I still don't make sense of this.
Well, I think science is still catching up.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to science figuring out dreams, deja vu, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think quantum physics is definitely going to be one of the sciences that are going to lead us there.
I've been texting with the leading engineer for dark matter viewing that's happening right now. Like they've put it on hold, but her and her husband are the PhDs, the main dark matter. And I've been texting with her because she's Arissa's daughter, Granny Rainbow's daughter. Is like she just designed 5,000 lenses that they're launching and setting up in Texas. Like this is all like top of the line, legit. Like the fact that I met these two people is a fluke of flukes, but they're the head dark matter people. And I said to her, I was like, so what are you gonna do? What do you think dark matter is gonna be able to do? And she's like, oh, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to see it. We're just trying to see it.
Yeah.
I'm like, and she's like, once we see it, we'll know a lot. Like, it'll take maybe 100 years to figure out the significance of everything we learn from seeing it. I'm like, that's trippy. I'm like, we really only see like a bit of reality. She's like, you see less than 5% of reality.
Definitely.
I'm like, that's just so amazing. I feel like every time I talk to people like that, I feel like Duncan Trussell and go like, wow.
Well, that's what's cool about those extreme science folks. Like, for example, I do presentations on light and sound for the Rosicrucians in San Francisco, and I'm always amazed by the people that come to these lectures. I mean, head of the physics department in San Francisco State came to my lecture and was just wowed by it, and they were very much into esoterics.
And this is because you're giving a cursory glance at science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A different shade of using the science.
Science is magic.
The science it proves magic, and I think that as these things get closer and closer, we're going to find out that they're.
And we're not talking in a what the bleep do you know kind of BS way.
No,
No,
definitely not.
just to be clear to our valued audience.
And whenever I talk to these leading researchers that come to these presentations, esoterics is how they forward think. I mean, you get stuck, if you're stuck in just academics on its own, you get stuck in a black box, and you have to expand your mind outside of that.
That's one of the things I love about the scholars I'm sharing with people on this podcast is some of their essays, because a lot of them have been pointing out for a long time. And this is what Honographs, the thing I'm dropping today at 4:44, which will drop, I guess, now while we're recording this. Or maybe it's Claire Fanger who will drop the day after tomorrow. Anyway, one of them pointed out that the reason we need to study this stuff scientifically or even academically is to have a better understanding of history. And it clicked to me, I was like, wow, we've been giving so many arguments for so long about why we need to include all this excluded information and redacted information like Chris Vance doing with the history of drugs and stuff, and psychedelics, because it gives us an actual, more accurate understanding of history. And I was like, that's actually the only thing that's relevant.
Yeah.
We don't need any other argument for why this stuff needs to be observed and studied, except for the fact that it gives us a more accurate understanding of history. That's the argument.
Well,
no other reason is fucking needed.
I agree. And at the same time, the people that are creating the future are sci-fi writers.
Well, that's another
I mean,
thing
that's
these
the
people
trip that
point
people
out.
don't really think about.
Academics are pointing this out. It's the fringes of every movement. And Angela Voss talks about this in one of her YouTube lectures. It's always the people on the fringes of every group. Actually, no, I think it was one of the new McLean lectures from the GD. One of the people talked about it there. I don't remember who. It's always the people on the fringes of masonry and all these other things that push the envelope. And it's like Newton with his study of alchemy. Newton was mad into alchemy and Kabbalah,
in his later
and
years,
as a
definitely.
result of that, figured these things out. Just like Einstein was actually always interested in mysticism
Of
and
course.
understanding God.
Definitely.
And that's somehow that encouraged him to think outside the box.
Well, I mean, look at sci-fi books of the early 30s and 40s. I mean, like when you look back at the ancients and they looked at the moon, they thought that there were beings up there, but what did they use to transport? They had boats.
There's beings up there, man. They're called Nazis. They have a secret base.
They had boats,
saw the movie.
and they believed that these people were obviously riding around in boats. You know, and then you look at how we look at aliens nowadays, or extraterrestrial beings. We think they have spaceships because that's what we use to fly in the air. So even the way we think about a lot of these concepts are only mirrors of how we understand movement and things like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was someone recently. It was someone who said, I don't know, maybe it was Hancock or something, like they were never big into aliens, but as soon as they did DMT, they're like, yeah, there's aliens. There's definitely aliens. I'm not even interested in the idea of...
Even mainstream thinkers like Musk, you think that there's like aliens among us. I mean, even these real smart...
Musk needs to do DMT.
I think he probably has.
I
He
don't
hangs
think
out with
he
Joe
has.
Rogan enough.
I don't think he has it. I don't think he's done it.
But even your cell phone, I mean, that's straight out of Star Trek.
We're recording this on an iPhone.
On an iPhone that was dreamed up in a sci-fi novel back in the 1930s.
And made by a guy who jumped off the roof and fell onto a net.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we need to stop this sweatshop thing, man. I think maybe we got to figure out a way to do that. Maybe it's not possible, but...
You know, I have faith in humanity in itself. I mean,
Really?
we're seeing troubled times, but I remember, like, for example, look at the old Edison campaigns against Nikola Tesla. I mean, DC power was considered bad. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, AC power they thought was going to burn down all the neighborhoods. All these flyers went up about how the minute the phone lines are going to give us cancer, they're going to kill us.
Bro, the suppression of scientists who are studying and developing Tesla's ideas right now is crazy.
Yeah.
The suppression of their research, and like you can see them demonstrating stuff, and people are like, "Oh no, it's faked. It's faked. It's all video."
Because there's no
recording,
profit behind
It's like
it.
I don't think it's all faked.
No.
I'm pretty sure it's not all faked. These are legit scientists
Tesla was a humanitarian.
demonstrating some of his theories that he couldn't demonstrate due to lack of technology back then.
Well, he was suppressed too. I mean,
Dude died
the
alone
guy was
in room 333.
The guy was a genius, but not monetarily driven at all. So Edison, just like he did with so many other people, came across him and said, "Oh, that's a cool idea. I'll give you $100 for that."
So you with your nice library and your recording studio and your house and your 3.5 kids, or you're basically the Edison to my Tesla.
Well, the branding, that's the U.S. I mean, look at...
Can I call you Edison?
Well, for example, like, most goods and services come from a small variety of factories. In fact, look at brands like, you know, Kirkland and stuff like that. I mean, these are the factories that make all the food, but if you put a Kraft symbol on that, and Kraft has, you know, a history of being in the cheese industry, and in everybody's mind when they think cheese, they think Kraft. If they put a Kraft label on that, all of a sudden people will buy it more than even the factory direct stuff. Only now, when, you know, almost like when the Great Depression happened and when recessions happen, people actually buy the cheaper brands. My generation veered completely from it. I mean, we came from Best Foods, and I know you're from Canada, so there's probably some different brands, but we all had household brands. And
All our brands are just this yellow packaging straight out of communism. No.
3 flavors of ice cream.
But
I mean,
I hate, for some reason, we have way more varieties of weed than you do in the States. I know everyone in America is going to be outraged when I say that, but I'm like, if you don't believe me, go to fucking Vancouver.
I mean,
Seriously.
yeah, it's a whole other issue. I mean,
Dude, we have so much weed in British Columbia. It's absurd. Like, now people have gone back to street dealers because the government, with the legalization, are charging like 14 to 15 to 20 bucks a gram, and it's dried up, and it's in like 4 layers of plastic packaging.
Yeah.
And people are like, call their old street dealer buddy or whatever, and they're like, yo, what's an ounce go for? They're like, yo, I could do you 150 right now for an ounce. And it's like, oh, what? Why? Oh, because the government didn't take its cue from all the people that caused the legalization to actually go through, didn't learn from how they've been doing it, and is trying to reinvent the wheel, literally. Well, not literally.
I mean, the weed industry is funny. I mean, because
So all the growers can't sell enough of their
Yeah.
quantities because the government hasn't figured it out yet. So there's been a resurgence of the illegal
the black
trade.
market. It's same here in California,
People I
big
know,
time.
they all have garbage bags in their house full of weed. You'll be
Yeah.
like, hey, can I get some weed? Here's $20, and they'll just like give you a huge bag. And you're like, Jesus fucking Christ. I smoke like 3 days a week, so it's
I
like
mean-
rare, and then, like that will last me a month.
That's a whole nother interesting issue. I mean, I agree weed should be legal. I mean, it's a fucking plant, right? But why the medical angle?
It's not just the plant; it might be the sacrament
But I mean, the medical.
of most world religions.
It's like
Just
90% of this pot is going to people who smoke pot either previously and now like want to buy it legally because they don't want to deal with the shadiness of buying in the black market. How many people do you know that only smoke pot for medicinal reasons? This is probably like 2% of new people that finally, like your grandma that maybe thought it was the devil's lettuce and now it's okay because I can go to the store and buy it and helps with my arthritis or something like that, or helps my appetite if I
Dude, my mom got a card to get the ointments for her arthritis, and like that's so revolutionary that my mom would do that because she was
Yeah.
transcendental meditator and like anti everything. My parents I never saw them have a drink my whole life.
exactly. And
You know?
I
and now
don't
she's got
deny
her weed lotions and her bottle of Fireball. You know, her cancer treatment. That's her cancer treatment.
And
a
I
little
mean,
bit of Fireball and a little weed ointment and her stories.
and so you're seeing how these things are happening. They're getting, they're slid in under medical angles and different things. Like I literally have friends that I bought pot from at high school that never stopped growing weed and now have empires. They're like literally rich off of this. They never stopped being a drug dealer, and now they're like looked up as a respectable employer in business.
But you know what's interesting? I checked out Hassan Minaj's recent Patriot Act episode on Netflix
Mm-hmm.
on the weed industry, and it's like being totally monopolized by all these fucking white dudes. Like,
Totally
corporate-
is.
It's so bad. It's like
Because the
what?
guys that already were doing it had a head start on the whole thing, and the first people that got the lawyers were the first people that got their because there's only a certain amount that can be out there. It's kind of like an alcohol license. If you and I want to start a bar in this town, we have to petition for months and wait until someone goes out of business
Yeah.
before we can even spend
They're worth so much money.
$150,000 for a license just to even serve it to be monitored by the ABC and everything
So
else.
my buddy became the guy in charge of giving those licenses out in Vancouver, and when the Irish pub and the Irish Mafia sort of screwed me over because they wanted only actual Irish-born musicians to play from now on in the city,
Mhm.
and not plastic patties as they referred to me so kindly. As a result, I put out an album called Proud Plastic Patty,
Oh, that's great.
which was like my fuck you to the Vancouver Irish Mafia. Yeah. Man, it's a hot day.
Oh, it's hot
This
out
is
here.
so
for
much-
sure.
I hope I don't burn. You think I'm gonna burn?
I think you're okay.
Okay. I don't want to.
But I mean, there's all sorts of.
I burned my leg so bad a couple months ago. It took months to heal and it's still discolored.
Damn. No, I got to the beach the other day. I'm still fucking peeling from it. But I mean, I
It's
think
like
it's
almost 40 degrees. It
Four-
feels like at least 38 degrees right now.
Celsius.
All right. I keep thinking we're in Vancouver. Like seriously, I think it's because you have such a nice home here,
You started doing metric on me now too.
dude.
The
I wear
US
a
is
size
funny.
46 shoe, and if you have a problem with that, you can suck it. It's precise.
It's precise.
Because if I go like 11, 12, 13, I can wear some shoes designs. I'll be 11, some I'll be 13. Generally, I'm at 12 and a half. But that's bullshit. If you just have everything is 40, like precise 46, always fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could digress into that for sure. I mean, look at fashion. And,
I'm sure everyone's so glad they tuned into this episode.
yeah, we're all over the place. It's great. But why
We're
not?
still going to talk about our main stuff, which is Steven Skinner versus Ashen Hassan.
Versus, are we doing a battle royale?
No,
what's
it's
going on
actually it's more them and Leach versus Lon Duquette.
here? Yeah, the psychological model.
Yeah,
versus
so there's
the-
these two ideas. Should we jump over into that?
Sure,
Why not?
why
Like,
not?
Like, it's just an interesting. I like the question. I don't like the answers. I like the
Mhm.
question. There's Steven Skinner, for those who don't know these people. Steven Skinner, Dr. Steven Skinner.
Yep.
Frater Ashen Hassan.
Mhm.
Or Frater Ashen Chasen. Listening to the Adam McLean lectures that just came out from the 1987 Golden Dawn lecture, I was like floored, dude, by the weird ass pronunciations. But most people into the occult say weird pronunciations. Chris Bennett, I always love it. He says origin, not as in origin, the saint, the almost saint, but as in like origin. He says origin.
Mm-hmm.
I love the emphasis. A lot of occultists, and also I find with Dungeons and Dragons players, have weird pronunciations.
And
I think it's because we mess with language so much. I noticed this in linguistics in college. The linguistic scholars like have a really strange sense of grammar and usage, but it's because they understand the rules, they understand how they develop, they understand they're not static. Like saying "ask you a question" is actually a futurist expression. It's not the result of being poorly educated in a ghetto. That's not why people say "ask you a question." That's a futuristic development of the language. It's more likely that we'll all be saying "ax" in 100 or 200 years than that group of people will learn the proper way of saying it.
well, and
Isn't that amazing?
You're right.
Because that's how language works.
It's ever changing, and you can't hold on to
Gevura
anyone.
became Gevura.
I mean, look at from our earlier conversation, gender, for example, and addressing people. I mean, grammar's out the window.
You brought it back to that, bro.
Yeah, but I'm saying as far as a grammar thing, I mean, we've literally as a society changed the way that we address, and it's no longer based on classical grammar.
Right.
I mean, it's ever moving.
There's nothing wrong with that.
and it should be moving.
Language changes. Deal with it, people.
We're evolving. Everything's going to evolve with it. But back to your
Even
point.
Enochian might make sense one day.
If enough people adopt.
But we have such different pronunciations, and of course,
I mean, look at
my point of
emojis.
view is that to the angels, we all speak like we're like sound like retarded children. I think to the angels, no matter what pronunciation system you use, to the angels we probably sound like babies talking to them.
Oh,
So
I'm sure.
I see it as use your own dialect. Like I was trained in GD dialect. Me and Martin famously did an analysis, put out the call portal analysis and all that shit, and looked at things which other people still haven't really actually looked at the same stuff we looked at. I think in a better way, which I hope someone fucking does. And if someone has, someone message me and let me know, because apparently the guy who might actually be the best linguist of Enochian is the consultant who works on Supernatural, which I found out when I consulted with
Interesting.
Misha Collins, because he consulted me for the last season of Supernatural. Of course, then they got another season, and every season is the last now, which is of course brilliant marketing.
Yeah, that's how everything
But
is.
yeah, I consulted on the season finale for the first time they were going to have it, and then they wanted the theological view. Anyone who wants to know about that, you can check that out on, or wants to hire me for film consulting, www.occult.consulting.
Well, I mean, like you said, your
Shout out.
dialect. For example, the operations you were bringing up, Dr. Skinner and Frater, Ashen Hassan, and I think that when you look at the way Skinner attempts it, it's a calculated ritual. It has to be done perfectly. There are no if ands, this then that.
At the same time, he talks you can tell he's really done it, because the way he talks about magic, and I don't think he did a GD training or anything, any formal
No,
training.
from what I understand, he just jumped
and
right in.
neither
But he
did-
has a lot of
He did Ashen, right? But
Mandala stuff
the
as
way
well.
he talks especially I noticed this on Glitch Bottle, the way he talks about the building up to the final stage and the necessary of repeating things or whatever, that's exactly right. When we go into in the GD, if we go do the invocation of Thoth or invocation of Isis, we don't do it once. We'll do it.
over and over again.
Oh,
Yeah.
me and Martin we would spend hours and hours in the temple. We'd do middle pillars for hours.
Yeah.
And then we do the invocation over and over until we felt it was invoked. Like you can tell when it's invoked.
Yeah.
Maybe it's you meeting the energy versus the energy being evoked, summoned to you physically. We don't know. That's the debate. But that idea of building up that final thing, and like you were even saying, the Abramelin, it's the last 2 weeks which are perhaps the most crucial, as you really, I don't know, maybe you can.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's because it comes down to intent. How bad do you want something? I mean, I think most people when they first start doing rituals, it's almost kind of like an inner laughter, because you're inciting these words and you're doing all the what am I really doing here? And
I like that phrase, inner laughter.
There is, because you're kind of laughing at yourself for even doing it, right? And then as you build up more and more confidence, that's when it starts to work, right? Because now you're begging in a way for it, And I think that you have to speak with intent. You have to want what you're going for.
At Temple Tehudi, we did legendary Thoth ceremonies every couple of years, and one year we did all 4 aspects of Thoth. So we had either a portal member or a 5/6er doing each thing. We had the baboon. We did the full costumes and everything for each of them, and that was some powerful shit. Like 4 different, I think it was 3 adepts and 1 portal member, all invoking different aspects of Thoth in the 4 stations. and then putting people through a ceremony regarding those energies. It was like, whoa, because that current is just so electric and so
it's so unique,
shocking.
It's unique compared to Solomonic work because you don't need to do any training, like GD style training.
I think Solomonic work has a built-in training. Just
it's specific. It's kind of like an Abramelin. There's a specific.
It's pretty intense. I think if you get to the point where you're doing Solomonic work, that's an Adeptus training in itself.
Yeah, it's like martial arts, for example. You can be an adept in a Taekwondo, for example, but not know anything about another style of karate, right?
I think actually that's a comment I made recently that actually it's one of the few things I've said that people like, because people don't generally like what I say. Shout out to Sam Scarborough.
So there's different many rivers, right?
I don't mind giving my opinions and having people disagree with me. I don't mind being wrong, as you know, like I love being wrong. I'm wrong about most things.
You should be open-minded to the whole thing. I mean, like, if you're someone who believes the magic is only in your head, you should still be open-minded to folks that are saying no.
Don't mistake the confidence of and thoroughness of my argumentation for certitude. They're not the same thing. That's just the nature of scholarly education, buddy. Like, you should put the best argument forward, and you should only change your mind when you've actually changed your mind. Right?
Totally.
Oh my God.
I mean, the fact that Skinner has written all that work and stands behind the physical, being that you're summoning, actual physical entity, runs the risk of him losing scholarship credit, and he obviously doesn't care, so I don't see any other reason why. He obviously believes
that's because he's a PhD, I think, of classics, and he's a classics PhD, and those, have a certain reputation in academia. They're great with the languages and good at history, but they're not necessarily seen as philosophers, because if they were philosophers in academics, they would often be considered you necessarily almost have to be a materialistic atheist in a lot of philosophical schools and traditions. If you're not an atheist and a materialist, or even dare I say a scientist, then in the most of philosophy departments of the world, outside of especially continental schools, you're fucking wrong. Like, you won't even graduate with a PhD, which is problematic in its own way. But as a classicist, everyone's like, oh, he studied so many Greek manuscripts, he started to believe them. That's how a lot of academics, I'm sure, would see Skinner's practice.
Sure, but I think a lot of
he started to believe the subject of his own writing. He's become a primary source material himself.
Well, and
he has.
And who is transcribing all these things? It's practitioners wanting the information. It's not like there's a big money. Actually, there probably is a monetary value to it now of getting all these translations. But back when people like Skinner were getting into it, and Peterson,
Joseph Peterson, not Jordan, the Canadian.
Joseph Peterson.
Joseph.
Without these guys going out and getting these things and translating them, the amount of materials that are here
Mather's
now.
shoddy translations and Crowley's extremely flawed.
Yeah, but we've been using the same bread pans that are passed down to us for so many years, to the point where we don't even ask questions as to why and how. In fact, we know that even Solomonic magic, even though it's said to come from King Solomon, history pretty much proves that that's not the case. It was attributed to...
No one actually thinks it comes from a real King Solomon. Even talking about the historical King Solomon is a bit talking about historical Jesus.
Totally, or Rosencreutz, or I think
less Rosencreutz. I'm pretty
less
sure.
so, but still, that mythical figure to build things upon.
Yeah,
These are the archetypes, right? I think that each culture kind of creates an archetype.
Well, yeah, there was so many Jesuses, and there's Apollonius of Tyana and all these other messiahs. There's always been these messiahs.
Yeah, and the truth has to be rewritten for each generation or group of people that come into it. The Jesus story, for example, right now it's probably the least popular it's ever been.
Outside of the massive rise of Christian fundamentalism,
in Masonry, you've got Hiram, the myth of Hiram, and that tells the same story, but uses a new truth or a new story to tell the same truths. And I think that all of these stories can get stale, and so they have to be rewritten. And I think that's what we see over and over again.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, there's two ways of thinking. There's Skinner, Dr. Skinner, Aaron Leach. I don't know if Joseph Peterson practices, but Ashin Hassan, and oh yeah, hey, how's it going?
Okay.
We're doing a podcast. Yeah, no. We'll let you know when we get to the cosplay element. Yeah.
But there's two schools of thought.
We could always have a 15? Is 15?
Yeah, maybe.
We could is he 15?
Yeah, he might come on a podcast.
We always have a 15-year-old guest to speak to our old white men ramblings.
He's got his 10,000 followers to follow.
Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus Christ. You and me just need to put on some thongs and go full JP Sears, man.
Yeah, we'll probably get a lot more views, definitely.
When I told my marketing mentors that I was going to use the dark arts they taught me for not just academics and religion, but for esoteric spirituality, they're like, you're not going to make any money really doing that. I'm like, I know. And they're like, did we just waste years of our lives coaching you? Because it was while I was disabled that they helped me learn. These friends of mine who, these guys make over $100,000 a month now in online marketing. It's stupid. It's
crazy.
Fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it would be nice to hang out more, Stefan. And Stefan's like, I told you how to do it. Go make the money. Then we can hang out more. Because I can't afford to do the things he does. Oh my God. But hey, I knew him when he was a shy geek sleeping on a sofa, broke, right? And now he makes. So I'm good for him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'll try and get Fleshlight to sponsor us. We'll see.
Nice.
But Jesus Christ, your son chiming in on gender for 5 minutes could actually could actually turn this podcast into something that could pay its guests.
Definitely.
Because that's why I want everyone to follow it on Spotify, because then Spotify is required by law to pay. And then I'd love to be able to hand over send $50 to every guest who comes on, especially the academics, because their time is so valuable, they're so underappreciated. But what they're researching, original research, original translations, it's so interesting to the occult world. And usually from the time in which they actually do their translations and stuff, it can be 5 to 10 to 20 years. Or in the case of Parasus, revealing that Yeats influenced the weight deck and introduced weight to Coleman Smith. He started that research in the... Hey.
What's up, big guy?
Are we behind the drumstick?
Yeah.
He started that research in the 60s as the archivist for Yeats's estate and for Annie Yeats, as well as the secretary for the Theosophical Society of Ireland, in the 60s, and then didn't have the information confirmed, Yeats's influence in creation of the Rider-Waite deck, essentially, until 1987.
Yeah.
That's a long time, 27 years, to be wondering if you can prove something. That's so long.
Yeah.
And then the lecture wasn't even released till the other day.
Yeah, it takes a long time for that stuff to come to
Fucking
light. Yeah.
almost 60 years for us to find that out. So, follow on Spotify or whatever. Donate money. Be great for me to entice some more academics to share their... Because I know these guys and girls who are doing... Or people... Oh, God, Jesus. Who are doing amazing research, and I know they're not going to tell anyone about it until it gets published, and that could be who knows how long.
Yeah. I mean, we are lucky that, the occult books actually have gone up as far as popularity.
The market value is an incentive. That's good.
Definitely.
Yeah. Keep buying books, people.
But keep buying books. But it's also become really hard to shop in some cases. I mean, I remember when I first got into occultism.
Well, yeah. It's hard to shop, especially with Hellfire Club.
Think I've had to clear my library probably 2 or 3 times as I've kind of progressed, because so much of it was just filler. I mean, so many books just have the same, bits of information.
That's why I don't put these
on
tables and shit in to fancy up my books. I'm like, you go buy the books that have the tables.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do filler and be like, look at all these diagrams, or look at all my versions of these diagrams. Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
And then
I'm here to just give whatever 2 cents I have to give, and that 2 cents, in its best case, is worth a hell of a lot.
True.
And the rest of the time, I just don't want to waste people's energy or time or paper.
Well, and a lot of the gems are, the good books and stuff are hidden. You like I. It
Well,
was,
as you showed me downstairs, we're going to give people a little video tour of the lecture,
Sure.
of the library.
I mean,
It's the first time, folks, that I've ever been in a fully functioning top-end recording studio and not paid any attention to the musical side of the room because of the library.
thank you.
You've got a true Arcanum secret.
Definitely. I try to keep up on it. As much
And
as I
like any
can.
good husband, you're smart enough to know that it belongs in the basement.
Yes. Yes.
That's probably why you still have a wife. For a while longer, right? Till the kids are graduated. Then,
Yeah.
then you're gonna become a woman.
She's very supportive of
And
it.
a gay woman?
I think mainly because her father was a Mason and her mom's an Eastern Star.
That's right. Her mom. Yeah.
So when I joined the Masons, I got a lot more love from the family, so to speak, because they're like, oh, okay, he's going through.
It's
it,
amazing, right? I ran into two just in Geyserville the other day. They saw my hat, and like, nice hat, and I think they thought I wasn't a Mason, but we even handshaked.
Yeah.
At first, I was gonna try. I was like, "What?" I said. I walked up. I was like, "So, you brother?" And they're like, "Yeah, Ted and Todd." And I was like, "So, do we need to figure out some sort of secret bow or something?" And even as I said that, he just grabbed my hand and gave me the shake.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, and then he looked at me weird because of the handshake I gave him. It was not what he was expecting. And then I was like, "I'm first degree,"
Mm-hmm.
which actually I sort of like being, because to people who don't know any better, it sounds like that's the top. That
Well,
sounds like you're at the peak of the pyramid instead of actually the entryway.
Even in the even in that degree, they tell you that, right? There is no degree really beyond the first degree.
Though, it's good to do full Blue Lodge through the first 3 degrees, the Master Mason.
They used to be a one-day event back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
You actually would go through all 3 degrees as one kind of continuous ceremony. In Arizona, you can go to one of their open lodges, which isn't affiliated with mine, and you could in one day, walk out a Master Mason. But the work starts after you get the degrees, right? I mean, it's not like you become a Master Mason, you're like, yeah, I'm done, I'm enlightened, because then you have to start to actually look at all the symbology that you've learned and how it relates to your everyday life and or mentally.
So, back to the thing I really want to frame for people is Skinner, Hassan, Aaron Leach. All these people see the spirits as being almost physical manifestations, whereas Lon Milo Duquette and those sort of people see it as being all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go from there?
Where do we go from there?
Here's the
I mean,
question, because it raises the question. I think I sort of phrased this earlier.
Yeah.
Is it that the people seeing physically aren't psychic? You could think almost aren't psychic enough to experience it in their true sense, of these energies of spirits psychically. And by the way, folks, this is not what I believe. I'm just framing an idea. Is it that the physicalists, let's call them, because it's not worth calling it materialist or supernaturalist even,
Sure.
because it's something that doesn't have to be supernatural. Some of them might see it supernaturally, and I think that would be a mistake. Seeing anything as supernatural is a fucking mistake.
Yeah.
You may as well be superstitious for that matter. But is it, you could say, are these people who require seeing these presences physically not sensitive psychically? Or you could say, of course, are these people who are psychically sensitive enough to feel and experience and communicate with spirits astrally or whatever? Are they just deluding themselves because they don't take the work seriously enough to cause a physical manifestation? And then you have this middle sort of way or view, and again, it could be, they can all be compatible, but you have Poke Runyon with the physical manifestation being simply the appearance of the demonic or angelic, the spirit's face.
Yeah, in the black mirror.
In the black mirror over your own face, which is how I was trained in Solomonic magic by Ramses. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You're the one with the library, and you know more about this than me. So, what are your
more about
thoughts?
this. I mean, I think that
More about
the folks. I mean, when it comes to Skinner, he's very adamant about physical manifestation, to the point that if you're not getting physical manifestation, you're doing it wrong.
You failed.
And I think that it creates an instant barrier between the psychological model, because now all of a sudden your years of work and you haven't had physical, you either start to question your work or you say, I call bullshit. And I think that it really doesn't matter I mean, some people are just naturally psychic and don't need a lot of work to point meditation and things to even open that up. What is it doing for you is the question. If your manifestations of spirits are actually effectively working for you, then who am I to judge?
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, we're talking about the occult. You know, it's a different experience for most. Although a lot of practitioners start to create kind of guidelines that they agree upon, similar experiences with similar entities.
Like when I was trained as an adept in Solomonic magic, the presence in the mirror, black mirror, outside of the circle, of course, right, in the triangle manifestation, and we had the full shebang, we had everything, right? It felt physical, and it looked physical. So there we go. How do I reconcile that with being primarily a more, you could call me a more psychological model type person, but that maybe I attend to the psychological model because of my sensitivity.
True.
Or psychism, as you folk like to call it, which I
Well,
think
and some
is
people
a stupid word.
have a bit of fear behind it too, where what happens if I let my brain go off the deep end, right? I mean, I think a lot of people approach magic in that fashion. They're like, what happens at that point? You know, I think a lot of people have deep-seated fears of going insane, right? And if I can't separate the difference between physical and mental, it can be detrimental for your health and your mental health. But what we're seeing here, I think what's different is that there's a prescribed method, almost like a scientific process on how you conjure these demons in Skinner's works.
Of course.
Where I think there's looser requirements in other systems, like you said, from the pronunciation of the names. I think Solomonic is definitely a very particular path, and most people that I meet that do Solomonic magic, most of them actually believe in physical manifestations.
Well, it can feel physical.
And there's no psychological model that's put on the system. I mean, when we talk about God forms and things like that in GD, there's actually, it's planted in the system. That there's psychological elements that you can become certain archetypes or take on different planetary powers.
Yeah.
There's no question, there's no even psychological school behind the Solomonic magic. It's literally, you do this and this happens.
Yeah.
It's like a science experiment.
Yeah.
In fact, there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to that study because of that.
And I've seen things during intense workings with I've done serious, long, many hour long serious workings in the vault with large numbers of adepts. And I've seen what I could only describe as physical light. Like in the point of even like some green light shooting out of eyes. Like what the fuck? I don't think I've even mentioned this before, except to the person, the main operator. I saw it. It was ICL for those who know him, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" And I've seen this many, many times in my life, but I also wonder. Here's an idea. What about the fact that, like, when I did the Enochian summoning of Ave with Daniel right at the end of Tahuti as it was falling, the temple. Definitely didn't bring any physical manifestation around, but maybe that's because both of us being highly sensitive and both good at being either directors, well, both of us being good at scryers, me also being good at director, and I prefer to play magus to a scryer than to have to do double task both myself, though I can do, that's when I do Shem work, that's how I do it, I do both myself, of course, because, I'm going through Shem angels. But maybe you don't need to bother with physical manifestation, perhaps, if you're sensitive enough to not bother bringing it through physically, because it's way harder. Like, and this is something, I think it's Leach that talks about this, like, it takes a lot of energy.
It does. And the real question is,
you don't need to bring it through physically. Why bother? That's a question. There's a question. Why bother if you don't need to?
What I think we're kind of tiptoeing around the real question is it working for you?
Yes.
That's
maybe.
really what it comes down to, I think, cause and effect here. I mean, we could psychologically go back, we could talk back and forth whether it's psychological or whether it's physical, but if it's working, then who the hell's to tell you that it's not?
Yeah, even the physicalists might agree with that.
it's an end means. If we're just otherwise we're just kind of mental masturbation with magic. If we're not actually achieving what we're doing, then why the hell do I have all these books?
Yeah.
Why would I spend
And as we
so
all
much
know,
hours studying?
masturbating mentally just doesn't really cut it.
And it's hard not to in this type of field.
I don't know if you can get off mentally masturbating.
No, you can't actually fully get off, and I think that's why it keeps going, right? I think that it's easy, especially in our field, to just go off and talk, and just go off on it because there's so many facets of the occult, so many things to talk about. I mean, when I have occult friends and we talk, there's never like subject matter that we're like prying to find. We're not bored. It's like, oh, what do you think about this? Oh shit, I read about this, or there's stuff to learn.
Oh yeah, well you and me have phone calls that last 4 hours.
Definitely. and then the opposite of that is that could have been 4 hours in the temple doing middle pillar rituals and doing other things too.
I don't think you've got to do the middle pillar for 4 hours, but once in a while it can be fun.
Here's a good question for you. I mean, have you ever been in an operation that you've had to back out of?
Oh.
Close prematurely?
In personal work?
Yeah.
Yes. In group work, no.
I had one group work where we were working out of the...
when I was first working with the Olympic Planetary Spirits, there was some intense stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was probably too early in the grades to do it. It was borderline, definitely at best. And Lord knows I've tread the line a few times and got myself into a bit of spiritual trouble. And I can testify to the damage you can do to yourself if you push beyond where you should.
Yeah, I've had it happen once. Me and my buddy Mike were working out of the Coptic Handbook of Ritual Power, which is kind of a
Speak a bit louder. Coptic Handbook?
Coptic Handbook of Ritual Power. It's actually a recent translation, and it's kind of like a Christian mix with Greco magical papyrus. And in one series of conjurating a bunch of these angels, we got, I think, to about like the 20th one, and my whole body just started fucking like shaking, and I could feel swarming around the circle, to the point where I actually had to have my friend Mike. I was like, Mike, dude, can you close the circle? Like, that was the only time I've ever gone pushed past my abilities where I was like, wow, like, holy crap, like, what's going to happen next? Like, almost shaking in fear with what I had just created. And we were literally fucking around. Like, this wasn't a planned operation. I had got this text. We wanted to just do it. And we kind of got stung a little bit, you know, in silence for a few days. You know, we got back together, and, you know, it happens. I grew from it. I get goosebumps talking about the story now. I mean, it was intense. But I've been back into that book since, and I've picked up where I left off, and learned a little bit about myself in the process. You know, that was the only time I've ever left a ritual like a kid with an Ouija board, like the first time kind of shit. You know.
Can you tell you've reminded me of something
Go
I
ahead.
haven't spoken of in a long ass time?
Yeah, go for it.
And this is interesting for all of you readers of Donald Michael Craig trying to self-initiate. So that's what I first did, of course. And you know, after like just a few months, I was ready for Adeptus Minor. And so on Midsummer, which we're coming up to in a week, or in a few days, 4 days. So this is like, and this would have been Midsummer. So this is the anniversary. I'm going to share the story, and this is in my diary. You can check it for reference, but I'm going to tell it to you as I remember it. And Midsummer, I got my little coven of Dan and Dave together, and we did our whole Wiccan setup. But I also did the Golden Dawn rituals that I was learning from Don Craig. So I guess I would have been 14.
Okay.
And I was ready to be an adept, obviously, because that's how it works.
I love it, the 14-year-old adept. That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I was ready. I was there. Now, some of the rituals I just skipped because they were too complicated, of course.
Throw these one aside. Yeah.
And I didn't make the tools or learn Hebrew. It didn't really seem like he emphasized it was that important. So, full disclosure here, folks. If you do it that way, if you do it right, maybe it'll work for you. Who knows? I'm definitely a fan of self-initiatory people practicing that path. But I direct people to orders, and like, you know, someone I just directed just got admitted to FGDU the other day.
You can always work solitarily.
Yeah, but if you're not near temple and you don't have the money to fly to one, like you flew to Texas for your neophyte initiation.
Definitely.
Was it David?
Yeah.
David Hogan.
Yeah, the OGD.
And that's, for people who don't know, that's OGD.
Yeah,
and
Order Golden
that's
Dawn.
Pat Zalewski / Martin's order. But
Correct.
it's also called the Rosicrucian Order of the Alpha and Omega.
Yes, that's the outer order name.
And that's what Samuel Scarborough the other day was telling me is the only true original curriculum presented.
Mm-hmm.
Which ironically, I now know, due to not from you, but from someone else
Yeah.
sharing some material with me. That original material, how original can it be when it includes something that I wrote?
Yeah, that's important, I mean, for the GD
People
students
should
out there.
maybe know that. So how original is a curriculum? And especially when I'm being told that a curriculum is original, and then when I find out what that curriculum is, I see that it includes something I fucking wrote.
History changing.
Put that in your pipes and smoke it, motherfuckers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Then again, but you know, if I was going to do this everything over again, I'd probably want to go through with Zalewski. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not Martin, but Zalewski. And Hogan seems like an amazing guy. And you had a great experience with him in
Oh
Texas.
yeah, David. He's very much dedicated to the order. You know, he's a teacher that'll check on you all the time. We do require journals and diaries of our work that we send back.
That's sort of servants of the light style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good thing. I've
Well,
always
because-
been tentative to require that of people, but I think now looking back on my days at Tahuti, maybe it would have been good for us to do that, because I think a lot of people miss out by not doing the diary, taking the diary seriously enough. I started doing fucking 3-hour lectures on magical diaries and how important they were.
Oh,
and I even sometimes would say to someone like, look, if you're not going to write in your diary, you may as well have not done it. And that's not true. That's not true.
it's not true. But
If you act as if it's true, you'll be better off.
well, you need
Provision.
breadcrumbs. You need breadcrumbs to see how far you've gone. And I think that
It's also an act of manifestation, and it really does allow you to be more silent afterwards and not have that,
to tell
that
everybody,
exciting
yeah.
desire to tell everyone what you're up to. You told your diary. It's documented. Now shut the fuck up.
Oh, it's an excellent form. I mean, that particular form works for everything from anger or anything else. You know, a lot of people, like, for example, when I get fucking frustrated or pissed off, I'll just type out my feelings, save it as a draft, and just by getting it out, you're done. Like you're saying, you don't have to tell people about whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that's definitely true for order work, especially. I mean, I go back to my old diary entries and stuff, and I'm like, I find both things where I'm laughing, and then I find things that were profound. Like, damn, how did I come up with that back then? You know, and even though I didn't really understand something,
Oh yeah.
or you're thinking, old drawings.
When I look at my diaries, which I'm currently releasing to my Patreon group, to just show them for self-initiates, for people in orders, or for just solo people who want to do MAGICk.me type style of pure practice without any mysteries or initiation.
Sure.
I'm trying to show them how I went through it, and that's why I'm sharing that stuff. But and I look at it, I look at my old stuff, and I'll see stuff. I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. Because the stuff you write, the stuff that's most amazing is the stuff that you don't take any note of as you're jotting it down. Because you're tired. It might be 2 a.m. and you might have to get it. You know, you got to do your rituals at 2 a.m. even if it means you get 3 hours sleep before you have to wake up and go to school or go to work or whatever.
Definitely.
Right? You got to do it. That's the discipline. That's a powerful fucking thing. And I look at that stuff and I'm like, wow, I just wrote that off without realizing that that's the significant stuff. The stuff you think is going to be significant isn't. And the stuff that you think is irrelevant can change your life later on, years later, looking back at it.
Definitely.
Like, wow.
And you kind of have to, because
That's manifesting change and alchemy and magic, if nothing else.
and you can get lost in progress too in the occult if you don't have kind of that looking back, kind of see where you've come from and where you're going, because otherwise well, it's true though. A lot of older folks I meet, they say that what I thought I learned I didn't really know in the end, right? And I've had many of
Well,
those
that's
moments.
a truly mystical wisdom saying.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely true.
It was either Aquinas I think it was Aquinas who wrote Summa Theologia and all that. Like, his last words before he died allegedly were, "Everything I have written is straw."
Yeah.
You have the main theologian who resuscitated Aristotle for the world. As he died, said doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean shit. Fucking straw.
I mean, look at
That's what he meant by saying it's straw. He didn't mean, I've made wheat for bread.
no
Straw.
Yeah.
Not even chaff. Straw. So, yeah, maybe you can make a rope out of it to hang yourself. Like, fuck the writing, man. It's not about that.
Yeah.
And we say that even as we promote the value of diaries and grimoires.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are actually more fun to read, I think. Like, for example, Frater Ashen Hassan's book, as a practitioner, someone getting into it, that's a wealth. I mean, we need more books like that on our shelves.
Well, I was so glad you showed me his book, because he and I have actually been messaging almost every day. Not about magic, about ninjutsu.
Yeah, I figured about some
about
martial arts or
ninjutsu.
something.
I love it. I told I hope he comes on my podcast and we only talk about ninjutsu.
That'd be perfect.
And nothing else.
Yeah, just
Everyone's like, oh, a new Ashen Hassan insights, and we're all like, yeah. So Hangaku. So when you do Hangaku, what do you find is the people will be like,
that actually raises another interesting point.
but poke running does ninjutsu. So Martin got into it because of me. This guy Martini, who I think is a Fade Ra guy, though he's not come out and said it. He just did his 5th dan, which is where you kneel in front of your sensei, and they have a sword behind you, and then they swing at you whenever they want. You have to roll out of the way without seeing it. How magical is that? That's the 5th dan test for ninjutsu.
Yeah, totally. That's hardcore.
And a lot of guys, Martini, who's also, I think he was a top GD guy in Fade Ra. I don't know. Yes, it's pronounced Fade Ra, not Ware Ra or Wari Ra. Fade Ra. He delayed for years, I think maybe even a decade, before he would found the person he felt was qualified to give him his 5th dan test. Because you don't want to fake it.
Yeah.
You don't want to fake it. You want it for real. And most people actually do pass it, apparently, because you really can at that. You're training to that level of sensitivity, and you can move out of the way of a sword blow. And they use wooden swords now, not metal ones like they used to. But
sure,
because no one wants to die.
Sorry, you lost.
It's not like back then. I think if you got cut up, it'd be like, well, you're probably gonna die young anyway. Now it's like, hey, I have a long life to live.
But I think when we talk about the difference between physical manifestations and psychological, people like Ashen Hassan and Skinner never came from that angle.
The psychological.
See, if you're a GD, you have to learn it. You come from that. If you're a Mason, you learn you learn the symbolism behind it. You learn all these esoterics. There is literally no esoteric training really required to jump into Goetia or Solomonic magic. And I think that's why Jake Stratton Kent, loves the example of just kind of like what I told you, where I went way beyond where I should have gone, and that's where I learned. You kind of have to touch the stove. Otherwise, you don't really learn. You kind of got to crash course into it. And these guys believe in physical manifestations because they never had a doubt at all that it was going to be all in their mind.
Yeah.
Where all these other magical schools built it in. Okay, if you don't believe this, you can believe it this way.
To play devil's advocate, though, it makes me wonder, did these people like me even just have such an insufficient education that we were forced to invent a psychological model due to our incessant failures?
Well, it's very common for new students to take too much meaning of a dream, or take everything becomes and it just happens.
The most important thing to tell someone when they want to tell you their dream is no thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Please do not tell me your dream.
Yeah, and there's
I don't want to know the results of someone's path working.
Well, it's
for
supposed
you.
To be you.
It's
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
And if there's anything to be taken from the idea of know, dare, will, and be silent, it's that there is a power to not telling anyone.
And not reading ahead of where you're at, right? Because if you already know what someone experienced when they went through, a certain Sephiroth, then you've already mentally planted what's going to happen when you do it.
I said to a frater once who had just gone into Portal, I think I was in 3=8, I said, I looked at him and I could just see all this stuff going on in his sphere, in his energy, in his mind, his psychology, his body, and I said, Portal, what's it like? What's it like? The energy you're working with. What's it like being where you're at? And he looks at me. He's like, I'm not going to tell you about my fucking alchemy.
Yeah.
And I was like, awesome. I'm in the right place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's ideal. That's
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah. He's going through it. He's in his alembic. Stay in your own.
That's true wisdom, right? Being able to let someone
So you avoid
grow.
car crashes. Staying in your own lane, man.
True.
Yeah. Don't mess with your alchemy.
Exactly. And that's
all those people who want to read ahead and just like cherry pick.
Exactly.
I've had so many people tell me that everyone needs to read the Rigardi's Golden Dawn book just to know the information, because that's its real value. And I'm like,
How fucking boring would that be?
that's such bullshit. I don't know what to tell those people. Yeah, man. It's like, I see it as like trying to be on the ground and get to the roof of a house by jumping to the top rung of the ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
You are wasting your time. Maybe one day you'll grab it and learn how to jump high enough, but you've missed the whole point.
It was kind of like what you mentioned, I believe, yesterday. We were talking about the Kundalini aspect, where the rising snake only keeps rising as long as you keep practicing. Otherwise, it falls right back down, and you got to start kind of over again. And I think we've all had times where that's happened.
Yeah, I like what Mother Bear's been teaching me about the Eleusini mysteries, because I'm part of the priesthood going through that with like Oberon Zell, as we were the guest priests, as the 13 priests, 13 pilgrims, 16-month Eleusinian cycle. Amazing. And she always says, and I love it, she's 82, right? So she's been doing this her whole life. You know, the mysteries are your experience. Yes. 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 That's the mysteries. You don't have an experience, there's no mysteries. You don't learn the mysteries by reading them.
Definitely. I mean, look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's at the core of most of these curriculums, from Masonry to GD and whatnot. And I think that you could read that book, sure, anybody could read the book, but if you didn't actually practice what was happening, you could certainly get a grasp of what's happening, but if you're not actually experiencing it, it's a whole different thing.
This goes back to me being 14 in my Wiccan coven on Midsummer. So I'm doing the whole Don Craig 5-6 self-initiation. This is probably something worth hearing. And we have a really strong circle, and the fairies are out that night. We were heavily fairy Wiccans, and to this day I still love fairy Wicca. People think I'm joking about it all the time. I even for a while put that as my title on my Instagram, fairy Wiccan. It's like,
great.
Feel like, oh Jesus, and I'm like, yeah, I love it, because I'm into the fairies.
Well, you came from Waldorf education.
Waldorf school, baby.
Yeah, dwarves and fairies.
Exactly. Hey, and people joke that like I was written up 11 paragraphs in the National Post of Canada, the biggest newspaper, in this article on Waldorf. It turned out to be a tack piece, which I didn't realize. So my first experience with journalists, and I've really avoided them ever since. That's why during my musical career, I really refused most interviews, most radio stuff. I did very, very few. Usually only when I knew the person who would be doing it, because I was like, these people are out to get you.
Oh yeah, they'll flip it on you.
They're out
sure.
to fuck you in the ass.
Yeah.
That's their goal. And like the woman who interviewed me and hacked Waldorf to pieces, and she like just lied about the things I said. I was like, yeah, I graduated with a small class of only like, it was like 14, 15 students. She's like, he graduated with only 6 other people. What a way to demean the school, right?
Yeah.
It's like, the reason we had small classes wasn't because people didn't want to go there. It's because it was expensive, $700 a month per kid. And teachers are aware in Waldorf that you can't teach that many students at once. I'm sorry. And we had stoners that barely passed, but were still allowed to graduate, like Tommy Chong's son, Jabron. Barely got through the school. He was too busy having sex and getting stoned. Like, really great guy, and he lives in Colorado now. We're still in touch. And then there was academics who got into like hardcore Ivy Leagues, like myself. They catered to whatever you wanted to do on your path in life. That's Steiner's sort of whole thing. Amen.
Totally.
But the hack job was like, he was taught telekinesis and all this other shit. I'm like, I didn't say any of that.
Yeah.
And you can see her,
What you
and
said
now
probably
she's
didn't
like,
make for a
she's
good
the CEO.
article.
That journalist is now the CEO of a major corporation. So I'm keeping my chit to play at some point when it's because that woman did a bad thing, trashing and like lying. These journalists just lie about the weirdest shit.
They
too.
get more views. They get more.
They try to make you look to be some sort of psycho instead of like actually quote you accurately. It's weird. And this was not 2000 when this article came out in the National Post. Of course, I took some advice from my marketing mentor, and I looked for the most complimentary fragment of what she said and used it as a self-promotion. Because like if someone's gonna hack your life to pieces in in the biggest newspaper in Canada and name you and hack you, just fuck you. Just like when I went to the ASE conference and I ran into the head professor putting it on in East Lansing, Michigan, Arthur Veslewis, head academic there putting it together, he's like, I've heard of you. And it was from that article, and he's really never given me the time of day since then. that had a real life
Impact,
consequence in my life half a decade later and damaged my fucking career
Yeah.
because they made me look like a fucking nut job. And sure, I'm a nut job, but not from that interview, not because of what I said in that interview. I'm a nut job because, I don't know, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
You guys can tell me
honest
better than that.
journalism is something that's just not
gone. It
popular.
doesn't exist
Nobody
anymore.
even, no one wants to read the news how it actually is. Everyone wants to, I don't know if you ever watched
Twitter
the
takes
US
off
news.
journalist stories because it says that it's inflammatory information when they're reporting facts. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if real life is inflammatory, but
But
it is still happening.
Oh,
Whether
yeah.
you believe real life is happening or not, real life is going to keep going.
Well, we either have social media or we have biased news sources, and so the truth of anything is very hard to find. And you can even see it in search engines. If you go into Google and you type up a certain political news, you won't get the same results as if you go to MSN or Yahoo or you go. I mean, it's amazing how much suppression there already is, even in the Google inquiries or search inquiries.
Yeah.
So, like, I find myself, especially in times like this, with the world kind of under some unrest and whatnot, I have to go check the liberal news feed. I have to check the Republican news feed. Then I have to try to find some world news.
Do you do that?
I do sometimes.
Oh.
Not everything. Not every article. That's tiresome.
I
And-
just
and you gotta
I
have
just
some
listen to
common
independent
sense.
journalists who I know. But I come from a journalist.
But that's what we've
background.
created. When you take people that only, hang out with people that are like them, they only like friends that like what they like, they live in social bubbles. And when, for example, when Trump got elected in the U.S., by the way, I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, it was a surprise to all of these people because all they saw was news against him, how much of an idiot he is, how nobody could like him.
I'll vote for him if he changes his name back to Trump.
But,
Make Donald Trump again.
But there was a lot of
Plus,
peop-
I'd have to become American, I think.
there were a lot of people that couldn't believe it. They're like, this couldn't happen. It's because you've only put yourself in a bubble of stuff that you like, and that's the problem with social media. Is we're all in these silos. I only see the news that's relevant that I want to see, or it's specifically dished up to me because it knows I'm gonna get pissed or be emotionally affected when I see this article. And that's actually true. Facebook's already admitted to algorithmically generating news feeds.
We all know
based
how
on
the
your votes.
algorithms are, what they're doing.
And it's not even just to cater to you, like I said. It's to oppose to you and make you, emotionally impacted and do something.
Yeah, Dr. Brent Weinstein and his wife, Dr. Heather Hang, did a nice little Dark Horse podcast talking about this
Mhm.
the other day that I really enjoyed.
And the amount of the
How-
dopamine interactions in your brain. I mean, people, if they post something and no one likes it and they've got 300 friends, there's actually studies that there's depression going on. And with every
Dude,
like,
people are
it's
killing
like-
themselves because of these algorithms.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Censorship, compelled speech, compelled thought. You're dead.
Yeah, and then it's actually hurting.
Is it that quick a process? Maybe.
Well, look at
for some?
comedy. Look at comedy. I mean,
We can't. I'm Canadian. We don't allow comedy anymore. It's illegal.
I remember when comedy would get everyone to laugh at each other.
That's why Seth Rogen and Ryan Reynolds live in the States now. They can't say that shit in Canada. Even though their humor that everyone knows and loves from Superbad, that's Vancouver humor.
Yeah,
We're the ones who talk like that. We're dirty like Viennese people.
and it's like I don't mind being the butt of the joke. It's fucking funny to hear people make
Dude,
fun
it's
of
the best.
white men and whatnot.
In Europe,
I
they have,
love
in
it.
Ireland and England, they still have the tradition of slagging. Like, the only reason I can tell you I fucking, ball gagged and raped your mom last night is because I love you so much, and I love you so much that you find that funny because there's not any ill intent. You just think, oh, that's funny. That wasn't particularly clever right now, but you
Exactly.
still laughed. You still
Yeah, it
laughed
is.
because
Yeah.
you're just like, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah.
That's slagging. If they slag you in Ireland, it's they like you.
Yeah,
If they're not slagging you, chances are you should actually avoid that person because they might give you a whack someday because they don't like you. If they're
Yeah.
not slagging you, they do not like you.
oh, it makes total sense.
Yeah, it's a weird culture in which you know that people care about you when they call you a cunt.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a certain type of humor, and
You have to understand how they think about it, otherwise you might get mad offended.
yeah, totally. I mean, it's common with high school and growing up, calling each other different names that aren't even used for the name.
Yeah.
It's just you just use it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I remember when.
But when I moved to Ireland and heard people calling me a cunt all the time, and I didn't realize they mean just bloke.
Mm-hmm.
If you had said that word on the street in Vancouver when I went there in 2005, the whole street would basically stop. It would be like a time stop spell. Like everyone would just stop and stare at you if you said that in 2005 in
Definitely.
Vancouver. So I'm in the ritual circle. The fairies are there. All the energies are there. We're doing all this mad stuff. I'm doing GD invocation. We're doing Wicca and Druid Wicca invocation. I'm ready to do the Don Craig 5-6 vow. And halfway through the vow, something happened. I actually lost limbic function, and I started like shaking, and I sort of hit the ground, and they both were, my friends were, concerned, and I was like, what is happening? It was like this, someone shoving something in my back so hard that it was just like immobilizing my spine, and I was just fucked. I just felt like I was being attacked, and it was a physical attack, and it came out of nowhere, and we didn't have a very physicalist or supernatural view of energies at all. We were very astral psychic model workers. We were fucking 14. But also highly sensitive and trained that sensitivity on a daily basis, really hardcore. And then they're like, there's something outside the circle, and it's not like one of these little energies where they're astrally seeing floating around. It's like a man-sized shape, and it's shooting this thing at you, and they could see it. I could just feel it, and I'm like, make it stop, oh God, like you gotta stop it, get it. It's outside the circle, it's somehow doing this, and they started doing whatever they could do, like basically trying to just blast it, like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. Eventually, it did go away, but I couldn't finish it. I couldn't finish the vow. I think I tried to, sort of, but like it was like, oh no, you are not meant to be doing this, and something has showed up to let you know that. Or it's like declaring yourself beyond your actual status. Like it was there, and it was real, and it fucking hurt, physically hurt. And why would your mind wouldn't just conjure that? It wouldn't just conjure that.
Yeah, it was very similar to the experience I had. Definitely.
Because you're coming from a place of psychological ego for sure. Like, oh, I've read enough of this book. I'm an archmagus now.
Yeah, well, it's not like that story is a bragging story. It admits your faults as a magician at the time. I mean, it's not like it's a gloriful story.
What's funny is the 2 years of work I'd done leading up to it, had they been in an order, I mean, that would have been sufficient to get through back in the original curriculum, up until, back before they started inserting my material.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
I had to say it. How about we take a little pause and I'll refresh my my gin and tonic, since we're having a beautiful summery day. I've been like locked away in my room so long, man. It's like I don't even know what's real. All I do is read essays and write curriculum.
A racist and oh no.
Who's obviously a racist?
Yeah, right.
No, Aaron Leach said who's a racist?
No, I was trying to find a post. There was someone he had wrote.
Not James Wasserman.
I don't know. No. He wrote a forward.
Oh, are we recording? Oh, what a to do?
No, he wrote a forward in somebody's book, and apparently some comments that he had via social media were bad enough to the point where he denounces ever working with him.
Leach.
Yeah.
And you don't know who this guy is?
I don't know who the guy was, and I don't know the context, so
well, I'm sure Leach will tell me when he comes on my podcast.
Yeah. Who the hell's this guy?
None of these guys are ever going to come on my podcast, man. I'm a black sheep.
I mean, those guys are, from what I understand, they get so many messages every day.
They're great. I love them all. Also, but I am not part of any orders or affiliate to any groups, and I have to be, because otherwise I couldn't give reliable advice when I direct people to orders.
Totally.
Right? Like if I was in an order, I wouldn't trust what I said. Like, why would you trust me if I was part of this or that group?
Exactly. You're already, you're tainted at that point. You already have kind of
As much as I'd love to get to do initiations and be Hierophant or do officer roles again, like, oh man, if someone's got to do what I'm doing. It's like I'm so glad that people like Aaron Leach and Hassan and all those folks are doing what they're doing. Like, I'm glad Jason Liu's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't do what he's doing, maybe I would have to do it, or someone else would have to do it. Like, someone has to do that.
Totally.
Like, it's all got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
We got to do it all, just like Carrie Fisher always
Well,
said
I
we
mean,
should.
if you're a writer, if you're a writer, then you're kind of like a spokesperson for, you know, the different orders and arts and whatnot. So you have to be careful of what you say.
Especially if you're in a group.
That's what I mean.
Also, if I was in a group, I couldn't talk about the stuff I ought to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But as my unique status allows me to say whatever I want without violating my vows. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you'll figure it out one day. Once you take
that's a unique situation.
Second order vows and stuff. Yeah. I know I'm in a unique situation, and there's people who I'm actually helping. Like, there's people who, and that's it. What else can you ask for in life?
Look at, this Israel Regardie. When you look at his book, at the time that was considered blasphemous that he released it to the public.
And he wouldn't have been able to write that if it wasn't for Aleister Crowley.
Exactly. And the public owes a lot to that,
Yeah.
It may have been blasphemy at the time, but it carried the tradition on.
Every Thelemite listing right now is touching themselves. That's right. Say it slower. Crowley. Oh, sorry, Crowley. I say Crowley just to piss off people who like Crowley.
No, totally. It's this, it's that.
But I say Enochian, not Enochian, because Enoch is an Enoch.
Yeah.
He's Hanoch. Or Hanoch, depending on your time period. Het, the letter het, is actually more of a h sound than a ch. The ch is chaf.
Yeah.
Chaf. If you want chaf to be kaf, you got to put a little diacritic in the center of it. A dot in the center of the kaf for it to be kaf. Otherwise, it's chaf.
Yeah.
Not whereas most people think that chaf is het, but het is actually het.
That's correct.
I know, right? It's my $200,000 seminary education at work, folks.
But I think, again, if what you're doing is working and you don't have books that you're trying to promote, then you can speak freely. And I love talking to occultists that are like that because they don't have any, you have to watch what they say and what they do.
No.
And even if someone tries to expound on you some higher adept material, me being not an adept in the GD, I can't speak for that order, but I could give you a profound truth of masonry from the higher degrees, and it would just go in your ear.
Yeah, what are you, wait, 32nd, 33?
Yeah, 32nd.
Is there a 33rd?
There's 33rd is an honorary, if you're like...
So you might get that one day.
If you were
because you've done both rights.
Yeah.
To 32nd.
Well, the second, the left side of the staircase, the York right, doesn't have a 32-degree system. It has 3 different orders that are broken up that you kind of have to pass through, eventually getting to the Templars.
So do you have to send money to Christians in Israel to take back the Holy Land?
No.
But you are a Templar.
Technically not a Templar. I didn't do Templars. I did Shriner.
You're a Shriner?
Yeah, I'm a Shriner. And that's actually something that you can get behind.
So you know how to find all the good prostitutes.
Oh,
snap.
Oh, man.
I'm just deflecting attention.
You're like that journalist earlier you were talking about.
Yeah, I have a friend from teenage years who became a prostitute or a sex worker, and she said Shriners always paid the best. And when the Shriner conventions came to town, she and all her girlfriends or co-workers were like so busy they would see like 10, 20 people a day.
That's
all
terrible.
Shriners.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
I mean,
or is it just liberated? The OTO people again are now fully stroking it.
Well,
they're like, that's right, that's right.
When people talk about what you're doing with the work, I mean, it's mostly personal work, right? I mean, the Shriners,
unless there's a cute girl they're with, then it's
they own and operate all of these hospitals, and the reason.
Can I get expelled from the Masons for saying this?
No, once you're a Mason, you're a Mason. But they
it's
generate
an ontological change.
They generate millions of dollars
for cancer,
for kids' conditions, everything from leg deformities to cleft palates.
It's noble work.
And we do it with no charge to the families.
Great way to distract from the fact that they're the Illuminati.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, what organization, a cult organization, can you say actually does anything remotely that impactful for the world?
The idea that we have time to is fucking hilarious.
It's amazing. I mean, what people
Like the idea that Aaron Leach is like controlling the governments. Well, but what he's actually doing is like, you know, probably trying to like make sure his daughter weaves enough wool while she's still a virgin. Because she does the...
Yeah, she does the virgin
Mad
hair.
respect and love. Mad
No, that's
respect
cool. I
and
mean,
love.
he's got a whole family in magic,
Like,
and
did
that's
you
cool.
weave the wool today? Because people need that shit.
It projects onto your kids, like you were talking to my son earlier that learned tarot, you know. And
He was telling us about
Yeah.
the tarot and the Wicca pandemic in cosplayers, amongst cosplayers. Yeah, no, 10,000 followers. I guess the downside, like we were saying, to having your son, Cameo, is that of those 10,000 followers, a few would probably hear what we've said
exactly.
and be like, yeah, let's mob flag this asshole to death.
Yeah,
Like,
and who wants to be on a
last
podcast
thing
with their dad, right?
Last thing you want is the millennials coming for you. I love Gen Z, but millennials, man. And that's you, the listeners.
Oh God.
Oh, I got
guess
two
I'm
little sisters. They're
Technically a
millennial.
millennial.
And again, we all understand how categorizations work. It's all bullshit. I mean,
Well, for example, I got a buddy in New Jersey.
like the comedian said, like, it obviously doesn't make sense to stereotype people and describe a whole group of people just because of how they all act.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
That's real. I don't know which comedian said that, but it was hilarious. Like,
No, I love the.
clearly we shouldn't judge an entire group of people based on the way they all act.
You know, you love all these conspiracy theorists, and you know, and some of them actually tend to come out to be true.
Well,
right?
we're
I
not
mean,
far from Bohemian Grove where we're sitting right now, are we? We're just like, what, 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away from
You're about
Bohemian
20
Grove?
minutes away from Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove.
I know a few members.
Yeah? You have the ritual even, don't you? You're saying.
I have all the playwrights.
Oh.
So that Bohemian Grove is so organized that they have they do some Lucinian rites. They also have
Really?
and they do playwrights, and they actually have a book that comes out with all of the actors that were in the playwright, who
Wow.
played what role. Kristen's got a number of friends who actually work there.
Wow. There's like a whole tourist shop or something?
No, it's all caterers, because all these high profile people come in.
Oh yeah, she's mixed with everyone.
Oh,
Your
yeah,
wife- Your
yeah,
wife
she's-
like
yeah.
catered Orlando Bloom.
Yeah,
I would cater him. I
She
would
kind of has
cater
an
him
ear
hard.
into all that, right? Because
I
she's
would cater
serving
him so
drinks.
good. He'd never want anyone else to cater him. Not even that chick he calls his wife.
But you know,
And I wonder why people think I'm gay.
I think you know.
It's just because I love elves and Legolas. I'd be gay for Legolas, wouldn't you? Come on. Orlando Bloom walks in, not now, but later tonight, in full elf gear, and says, Jesse, I need to have you.
No, I think you got me all wrong.
Well, your wife would tap that shit. at
Yeah,
least.
my wife maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Me and your wife could tag team that tight elf ass.
But I think it's funny when you mention a lot of these conspiracy theories, because I think I can't remember the writer. The writer, I think it was like Alan Watts or something, that basically said that people love conspiracies because it actually gives them comfort. Because actually,
The beatnik, Alan Watts?
yeah,
I was hanging out with his kid or his kid's kid or whatever at Isis Oasis because they booked out like 20 of our retreat weekends for their sex cult.
trippy.
I don't think it's a sex cult, but one of our people accidentally, April, walked in on them to bring in new towels, and like their application form is like, do you have any open sores and stuff like that? And they're all naked all in there, and I think they're doing orgies. But they also do their meetings at like Jesuit retreat centers, like Jesuit monasteries. And they're like,
Interesting.
no one comes into the hall when we're in retreat. It's like, I think they're doing sex.
That's
It's called
funny.
the Human Awareness Institute for all of you people out there who want to. And they have like all of Alan Watts, because it's run by, I believe, one of his kids or.
Well, I believe
daughter or
I believe
something.
it was him. One of his quotes was that
I
to-
love the beatniks.
to the effect that conspiracy is a comforting technique to actually think you know what's going on, because the idea that you don't know what's going on is more scary than knowing that the cabals run everything, or the Jewish banking system, or
Yeah.
George Soros.
I mean, I'm of the belief that the rich, powerful people aren't organized enough, and they're mostly enjoying their lives to
There you
like
go.
actually run the world. But there are these groups, like you were mentioning one of them the other day. What was that group you were mentioning?
BlackRock.
And also this Order of Serpents, or the Nine Serpents.
There's been conspiracies around that. I don't really want to, paint that picture because I'm not sure about it. But I have been reading
I
conspiracy
gotta get
theorists.
my buddy,
the Kazali,
my buddy Jeff Contreras on here.
Epstein's wife apparently are connected. Even
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine are connected to these.
Well, I'm a big believer in Pizzagate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because most people don't realize, but as a Canadian, when the two Canadian billionaires were strangled in their compound after they were about to go public about their working relationship, if we can call a global pedophile ring a working relationship with the Clintons.
Yeah.
They were about to go public, and they were found strangled in their compound.
Yeah.
Two Canadian billionaires, the husband and wife. And everyone in Canada was like, "Oh, this is gonna be big. This is gonna be big," and America was silent about it.
Yeah.
Wasn't reported, pretty much. What the hell?
A lot of that. I mean, when you, I don't know if you've seen the Epstein documentary.
And CSIS, our Secret Service, just like covered up all their
they
info and
literally
everything.
had I think it was over 25 young women that had testified that Epstein had raped them.
Yeah.
And the police department just shut it down.
Yeah.
It wasn't until they re-brought the case back
Dude,
up to the FBI.
when
that they
Michael
actually did
Shermer
anything.
says that something's a conspiracy, you should pay attention, because that guy doesn't believe anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he debates Clovis. You know what Clovis is?
No.
Clovis is the layer that, and I learned this when I was doing biblical archaeology, which is basically a month of studying pottery. It's not fun, but it's how you learn dating. And we had to do it, and we studied a bit with this woman who did amazing work on sort of the female priests who actually ran ancient Israel with their secret. She was part of the dig that discovered all their magical implements in every single cottage or dig of every village. All these women had all these magical implements separate from their jewelry and combs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they were doing magic in the household while the rabbi husbands were out doing public life, and then they'd come home and take their marching orders from their wives.
Mm-hmm.
Because why? Because they worshipped Asherah, the wife of Yahweh. Like, we know this now. And I was being told this in the early 2000s because the digs were happening and they were discovering this stuff. It's like, okay. It's like almost as significant as the recent scrapings of the altars. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I would.
And yeah, so I was tooting Chris Bennett's horn because he's now been vindicated. Years of being independent scholar.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right, and they're going to start scraping all these ancient altars now to show different traces of cannabis and psychedelics on these things. It's like, yeah, the high priests were high. They were high.
It's the elephant
in the room. They were high priests,
room.
and they were called that appropriately. They were high as fuck.
All of them were. All these traditions, Buddhism and...
Which actually brings us back to Stephen Skinner, who's very anti-drugs and ritual work, which I have always been, of course, myself. And he's very... don't do it under the influence of anything whatsoever for this physical evocation. And I mentioned that to Chris on the phone the other day, just because we talked, and he's like, we've been talking. Chris Bennett and Stephen Skinner.
Oh, that's great.
Are in daily dialogue.
That's great.
I'm like, are you gonna turn him into a pothead?
Well, it's the.
I don't think so.
It's always been the elephant in the room, you know what I mean? And people that are highly spiritual, we always associate spirituality
could be a purple
with,
element if you do enough of the right drug.
Well, and for example, in Masonry, one of the first tenets you learn is temperance.
That's a marketing reference to Seth Godin's marketing theory.
Oh, okay.
Just a little. For all you marketers out there.
But like, for example, in Masonry, one of the first things you learn is temperance. And you're supposed to look at your life and see what you can cut and, what's excess. Almost all, a lot of schools are like that. And I think that if you're anti-drugs, the more and more you study the occult and you see the inclusion of drugs and how it played a role in it, you either turn your head or you start to look at it more and accept the notion that drugs have always played a role in spirituality.
Well, I always planned to one day, I hoped that I would live long enough to one day experiment with ritual magic and drug use. And I did. I intentionally, I think I'm probably one of the only people, if not the only person in Golden Dawn history who went through the entire Outer Order, never having touched anything, and intentionally staying a virgin because of the shit I had learned about the power of that stuff,
sure.
about being that abstinent in every way. And that's why I'm sharing all my diaries online with my Patreon group, because I don't think anyone else has done that, and also been a good diary keeper, like a militant fucking.
And who wants
diary.
to admit it? I mean, like, we know the priests, you know, in the Holy of Holies were burning, you know, acacia and hemp and stuff. And what church wants to admit that at the roots of their religion, there's actual drug use that's being condemned by the church? I mean, it's an uncomfortable reality for anyone who's never experimented with drugs.
You can speak up a little.
Of course.
Yeah. Access that diaphragm, baby.
You know, I think that's uncomfortable for folks that have lived a life of abstaining from things, and to learn that the very thing they've dedicated their life to has an aspect to it which can only be opened up.
Oh, could you imagine, like, all these, like, abstinent, like, Mormons, like, trying to admit that the greatest mysteries of their faith can't be revealed unless you go to the altar of the high priest and burn a fuckload of cannabis?
Yeah.
Think
about the
they
people
can't handle that.
Yeah, and then think about the folks that go to, you know, Catholic Church. I mean, that would be blasphemous, complete blasphemous for them.
It's worse than that. It's illegal.
There you go. Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. Well, in
But
some
I think
countries, man,
it
you
has
can
to do
still
with
be
tolerance.
executed for having cannabis on you.
Yeah, true. But it comes down to tolerance. I mean, some people, you know, let's say someone who's you know, drinking alcohol for a lot of their life, probably have a tolerance a little bit better than someone who's never drank it before and, like, thinks about what it's going to do to them, or who's only had it on occasion. So, I mean, if you can hold yourself together, drinking alcohol, for example, I think a little bit in your ritual isn't going to hurt anything. And I know a lot of occultists that actually swear by some sort of changing of the psyche, with either by drugs or light use.
Well, I've had a couple gin and tonics on this beautiful, sweltering 40-degree heat day. Sorry, 100-degree heat, whatever the fuck you Americans call it. And we're going to do some ritual work after this.
Totally.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see what Tahuti says, because I'm going to show you how a Tahutian invokes Tahuti.
All right.
Yeah, you got your Nemes?
Yeah. No, I don't have a nemesis here. I just have my robe and
That's all right.
my satch.
I should have brought one for you.
Yeah.
I could have given you.
They were supposed to
you
make
could've-
me one when I went through everything, but I haven't got it.
What, you mean the most authentic Golden Dawn Order in the world failed to supply you with the Nemes they promised you?
At the time,
That sounds authentic.
the tailor was only able to do that.
I'm joking, people. I'm joking. I'm joking. So much love to David Hogan. I hear he's just done amazing things with the shit show that Martin created.
Yeah. I mean, David's super focused on the order, and that's what I like about him.
That's what matters. That's what matters.
And that's really that's what everything means to him, is that order. I know, you know, some folks move on. I know, like, you know, Martin's definitely more busy with his
Bitcoin.
Wealth creation for people, getting people to work from home and stuff. You know, power to him. I think that's cool. I mean, if that's something you want to do. I do think
I'm just glad he graduated from selling. ...
No, I think it's a great thing.
Shout out to MAGICk.
The only problem I had with it was that, you know, when people from my order were, like, trying to get me on board with shit like Bitcoin, and I think that you run a big gamble if you're the leader of an organization and you're selling product and stuff.
Dude, me running the Golden Dawn in Canada led to people shooting guns at me
Crazy.
and attacking my mom, raping my sister.
Terrible, man.
Thank God my family doesn't give a shit about what I do, so none of them will ever hear this.
And it's not.
Plus, it's not rape. It's just a whoopsie.
Yeah.
I know, I said it.
No, that's all right. I mean, it's important that you say it. I mean, even the OTO has reeked of shit like that for a long, long time. I've met a lot of girls that have joined the OTO and left because of, you know.
I think
sexual
the OTO
predators.
wants to have a naked woman on the altar. The priest who comes out of the secret space with his staff should also be naked. Why is just one person? Why is just the women naked in the OTO? Can you imagine? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I've started this new Wiccan group. Do you know any women who want to join? They're like, why? It's because all the women have to be naked, but not the men. No, just women are skyclad. That's my new Wiccan group. Come on.
It's a trip.
It seems so contradictory to Crowley, Sea Dog's whole trajectory. Why would he just want women to be naked? Well, I can understand why a guy would just want the women to be naked.
I don't think he would have been opposed to everybody naked either.
Right. Like, why not have like in the Gnostic Mass, have men and women naked? If you're going to do nudity, it should be across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, it just seems like masturbatory.
Well, that's part of the allure. I remember a few members who joined the OT who tried to get me over, and as you know, I'm busy with enough shit already. And that was kind of the selling point.
Are you busy?
Yeah.
Are you busy doing everything?
Not everything. I just mean all the other order work. I think I spread myself thin in order work. But when these guys would come back to tell me about the order and why I should check it out, it's always, there's a naked lady laying on a table. It's amazing.
What, they use that as a selling point?
In a way, it's used that way.
Yo, OTO people, if you want, you could improve your public image a bit by not using "you get to see a naked lady on an altar" as a selling point. Just saying. You're selling a spiritual religion, maybe don't use that as a pitch point.
It's
It just
not the
seems
strongest.
childish. It seems adolescent.
But I think there are some folks that want that kind of thing in the orders. That's what they're going after. Whether they haven't had, I don't want to degrade anyone. So I think it's just they're looking for that sort of thing when they're joining an order. Like, for example, when I joined Masonry, I wasn't impressed with the rituals that I thought that I was going to see. But when I joined the Martinist line, I got that NGD. Both initiations, both really got. That's what I wanted. It was the missing elements for some people. Costume may not be even a part of it, or even do everything astrally, right? You could do everything by yourself at home. But for me, I got different things from those initiations that I thought were more powerful. And for some people, it might be that image, the Lady Babylon. Some people need that, and I think it is unique in its own thing. I mean, it's Masonic at its core, because these are all Masons that start all these organizations. They just wanted more, and wanted more of different things.
More. How do you like it? How do you like it? More. How do you
It's kind of like you said when we talk about new orders. It's like, why? It's already.
Why do we need new
There's
orders?
already a system. There's already a bread pan to cook. Why do we need to go shopping for a new bread pan when we know the system works and has been tried and true, working for so many years? I mean, sure, you could create another flavor, but it's going to be dressed in Masonic rituals. It's going to have the same old, frame to it, skeleton.
Of course, we say this as I'm creating Yeats's Celtic Mysteries.
Well,
Order of
you're not
Celtic
creating. I mean, you're
Finishing
bringing
what
it
he
to life
started.
what he started.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Just for 4 years, and then the people who go through it can run with it from there. And all the material will be released so that anyone who doesn't want anything to do with me or the people who do it with me can also run with it, because they're not my mysteries. They're the Celtic mysteries.
Exactly.
They don't belong to anyone.
And if someone has deep passion for Yeats and Celtic history in general, that might be exactly what they want. I mean, that might give them something that the OTO or GD couldn't give
One
them.
of the things I've been telling people who have just stepped into it with me is we are actually, like, a lot of the magic that we're gonna do is actually all inner order Golden Dawn magic, because that's what Yeats planned. And you can see notes in the unpublished diaries from the adepts who worked with Yeats saying this should not necessarily be shared secret inner RRAC teaching only. But Yeats clearly is like having them do it, and clearly planning on teaching it to whatever Irish nationalists wanted to join his new Celtic religion. And so it's like, yeah, these are the magical techniques for people. People are saying these inner order techniques should be put in the outer order. That's okay. I'm all for outer orders that don't include any inner order techniques and are totally traditional. All for it. Just like I'm all for complete sobriety and ritual work. Fucking big fan. Dude, when me and Chris Bennett did Enochian Ether work with Lon Duquette before going to our first Gnostic Maths on the fucking anniversary of the Book of the Law, big night. It was a big night for us all. I got hella stoned with Chris Bennett, and I was like, I've never gone into ritual work hella stoned at all before, or under any influence of anything.
Yeah.
And I had a powerful experience of the ether, which I've worked text before, of course, TEX. And was it a powerful experience? Yes. And I don't want to give the details, but and the intention and the working I did yielded results that you literally wouldn't believe. Like, it was the first time I actually did magic for money, right? Because it was after my home invasion and robbery and shit like that. Yeah, shout out to Griffin's cronies. Fuck you guys. Fucking die. And I did it for money. And the next morning I woke up, and out of nowhere, $1,300 was in my bank account. It turned out to be from my estranged father, who I hadn't spoken with or seen in over 5 years. And I didn't ask for it. But I did this TEX ether work working with Lon and Chris. What the pot did, so the working was successful despite being stoned out of my mind. What was hard was to maintain my focus throughout the working.
That's really what it comes
If I
down to.
hadn't been trained up the yin yang, I don't know if I would have. I think I would have fallen out of it. Because I had to struggle so hard to maintain my focus, so hard. And I was, because you know when you're in a deep astral or scrying working, like there's the tunnels, there's the zoom, there's the you're like, your body, your shakes, and then it goes numb. Like, that happens all the time. And but then you could feel yourself starting to drift out of it if you're not able to focus your will. And so the will is crucial. For anyone who rushes through neophyte like I did, you can rush through the grades, but don't rush through the work, and don't leave any of the work behind. Keep doing the basics till the day you die. I swear by the basics all my life. Meditation 1, Stella Matutina edition, not edition, right? It's crucial. I mean, that's why even people like, you see the same techniques in Franz Barden, Rudolf Steiner, all the same techniques. That's one thing I wanted to say to you. You know what's interesting? Is everyone talks about, like, oh, the German origins of the GD, blah, 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 bullshit, right? But it's like, read Rudolf Steiner. Here's an example of not only a Freemason, he was a Freemason, which shocked the shit out of me when I found that out.
Sure.
But he was also part of these other lodges. I don't actually know what they are. But when you read between the lines of how he describes his teachings in an outline of occult science, which I recently did, the main things that you need to know about Steiner, between the lines and his vague German expressions and the horrible translations, I'm going to one day do a proper translation, because every single chapter he writes could be distilled down to like a fucking paragraph.
Oh yeah,
honestly.
totally. Yeah.
You don't always have to say Schützengraben, Vernichtungspanzerkraftwagen. You can actually just say Panzer to mean tank. You don't have to say the whole
Sure.
Schützengraben, Vernichtungspanzerkraftwagen.
It's kind of like A.E. White, just like a lot of
A.E. White.
excess writing. You're just bored out of your mind.
Yeah, wait, man, one of the most boring writers in the English language, next to Edward Bulwer Lytton. Not to say that Zanoni didn't change my life when I read it in Portal as required reading.
Yeah, I've been seeing, speaking of Barden, I've been seeing quite a bit of students starting to pop up using the Barden system. Yeah,
well, Czech Hermetics is doing a lot. I was in Prague. I tried to get them to get involved with what I was doing there when I was there, but they just sort of ignored me. They're doing new translations, stuff like that. And
yeah, I've got both of them. They're great copies.
They took the U out of Quabala.
I saw that.
But I loved it. Frater Not, who I did an interview with, right? That's the second most listened to interview. Maybe we'll trump him.
Well, they also
he calls it Quabala as a way, instead of saying Hermetic Kabbalah, to distinguish it from Jewish Kabbalah. He says Hermetic Kabbalah. Instead of saying, we say Hermetic Kabbalah to represent Hermetic Kabbalah.
Sure.
He's just called, he takes it a step further. I love this guy. Shout out to San Francisco. He says, and Blazing Star OTO. Oh wait, it says, he calls it Quabala. I think that's so cute.
Right.
That's so fucking cute, man. It's like, don't call it Hermetic Kabbalah, call it Quabala.
That's great.
Because it's so diminutive but funny, but also apt. It's true.
Well,
We study Quabala.
Kabbalah's been so it's been so bastardized. I mean, You've got all these different versions. You've got Kabbalah mixed in with stuff that never should have been mixed.
Well, maybe, but like, but here's actually something I've been talking about. This is what actually the real value of my what I do. I've been sharing some of the research done by Gershom Scholem's predecessor, Moshe Adel, and he's been uncovering. So, like, even Hanegraaff and a bunch of other scholars put out these articles, and they about Ramon Lull, who I got to see his statue when I was in Mallorca in Zelator in '97, and I was in my Viennese Gastfamilie took us to Mallorca to their estate there because they're antique dealers and they had an estate in Mallorca. Of course,
Yeah.
as every German speaker does. And that's where Ramon Lull is from. And they have a statue to him in Palma. And it was always believed by all these academics up until very, very recently that he had no experience of Kabbalah. So his whole cosmology seemed so Kabbalistic. And all these scholars, like even Claire Fanger and stuff like that, all these doctors are like, no, he just had this kind of Christian mysticism that was really similar to Kabbalah. And Moshe Adel comes along, does research into the people who were influencing him, looks deeply at some stuff, and finds out it wasn't Abulafi, it was this other guy. I'm not even going to attempt the name, but I did a lecture on Adel and this exact topic. He looks at it and he's like, okay, Ramon Lull had manuscripts sent to him by this famous rabbi, Kabbalist, directly. Boom.
Boom, yeah.
Yeah, he knew the Sephirot, he knew the Tree of Life. His whole thing was not something created parallel and ignorant of Kabbalah, but informed by it, just simply not named as it to protect the Christianity of it all.
Sure.
And that's something I wanted to get into with regards to the grimoire stuff, and you were showing me your library, which we're going to do a video of for people, right? And the idea that there's all of these grimoires are highly devotional, like John Dee's work was highly Christian devotional, pietistic even. And the idea I think worth looking at is the question. The question is, did these guys mostly couch their occultism in Christian thought, language, and ideology to protect themselves, or because they believed it? They believed that's what it was.
I think they adopted it and put their own spin on it.
You think they adopted religious Christian pietism into occultism?
Yeah. I think that in the early Christian churches...
But did they do that because they were faithful or to protect themselves?
No, they were one and the same. I mean, a lot of the early Gnostics and stuff at that time were using the occult to actually help religion. I mean, they were students of this, and they wanted to kind of...
Well, a lot of them wouldn't be considered Gnostics. I don't know if you know that, but Gnosticism requires you to believe that there's a spark of God inside you. And I mentioned this the other day, actually, somewhere in something I released, where that's a heresy that most of them didn't tend toward. They didn't believe that there was a spark of God in us, and that is why it's Claire Fanger's piece that I'm actually recording for tomorrow.
Well, there's different streams of Gnosticism.
They practice like the sworn book of Honorius as a way of connecting with God because there was no spark of the divine in them. If there's a spark of divine in you, that's when you get into Gnosticism a bit.
Well, there's different
If you're
streams.
a good Christian, there's no spark of the divine in you. There's no substantial essence of God within the human being. This is dogmatic Roman Catholic theology. And it's still actually maintained by Orthodox Christians as well, but they get around it a little bit through the filioque controversy, which is the debate, of course, whether the Holy Spirit descends from the Father through the Son or bypasses the Son and just hits us direct on, which allows us, of course, to have direct connection with God, bypassing Jesus through the Holy Spirit, hence the filioque controversy. Filioque just means and the Son.
Sure. Well, you can see a lot of those grimoires.
So they don't have the essence of God in them, but they can connect with the essence of God directly through the Holy Spirit without going through the door of Jesus.
Well, and a lot of those...
It's pedantic as fuck and really stupid, but it's interesting.
Well, in a lot of... like the Coptic handbook I have in there, the names were changed. They took Greek-Roman papyrus rituals, and then wherever it said a certain Helios, it was just changed to Jesus.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
And which Coptic?
I have the Coptic Handbook of Ritual Power, it's called. There's a bunch of early ones. I think I have a couple in the library.
They just did a find and replace.
Yeah. I mean, but it kind of works if you think about it. I mean, a thoughtful, well-written liturgy could be like a Mad Lib, right? You could put whatever you want. Who are you
But
calling out to?
that challenges a lot of people who say, don't change the system, don't change the
Well,
tradition.
when it came from paganism and it's morphed its way into this organized...
So you
know.
would consider that something separate from grimoire work.
Yeah.
It's a good point. It's why I think it's okay to do the LBRP using Yeats's archdruids instead of the archangels.
Dude, I know chaos magicians that use, like, Pokemon.
Oh,
and
dude,
shit.
well,
You know what I mean?
I'm
It's like-
hardcore into chaos magic, as everyone
that-
knows at this point, and so I have no problem with doing that sort of thing. But
It's-
partly, I think that is a liberality I have. That's a new word. Liberality. It's a real word. Just like if they can redefine racism, then I can say whatever I want. In America, but not in Canada. Then I go to jail. And I don't know. What was I saying? The gin and tonic went to my head.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, it's very...
Oh, I can say that because I think I had such a good Golden Dawn experience from 15 to 20 that was, in my opinion, quite puritanical. Like, as it was said, we ate, slept, and shit Golden Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Did we add in stuff? Yeah. But
Well,
apparently so did the Rosicrucian Order of the Stella Matutina.
Well, yeah, if you look at Frater C, you could see
I love that the most
that
authentic...
Felkin was a Christian at the end of the day. I mean, he...
Well, it's all Rosicrucian.
Yeah, I mean, on his grave.
We didn't even say the word, we just called it the R word. We didn't think people were worthy of hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's just a sign of going through a rigorous training that actually does transform you. You tend to have respect and reverence for the things that changed your life. And that's a spiritual modus operandi we should all be seeking. Which actually brings me to another point, which Stephen Skinner on Glitch Bottle said, magic isn't spirituality. Now there's a topic I'd like to get into with you.
Again, Skinner comes from it from the Art of Solomon.
Speak louder a bit.
He comes from it from the Art of Solomon. It doesn't have any theology other than believing that there's higher forces than yourself. I do think it is silly for
That's
some...
very AA of him. And I don't mean the Crowley AA.
Well, and you look at a lot of grimoire work, you're basically...
Alcoholics Anonymous.
But you're basically
Which should be called
calling upon a
Carl
higher
Gustav
force.
Jung Worshippers Anonymous. It's a Carl Gustav Jung cult. Their Messiah is only named once.
That's a trippy one.
I'm joking, people. My best wishes for all of you, one day at a time.
Yeah, Jung has its place. You know, it's
Jung. Let's call him Jung.
Yeah, Jung.
Occultists use weird words. You say facsimile fucking weird.
Facsimile.
How the fuck do you say that?
Facsimile?
Now tell us, as Chris Bennett would say, what's the origin of that word? What's the origin of facsimile? No, I'm just fucking with you. It doesn't matter how words are pronounced. That's why I just like to chill out and ask questions.
Totally. I'm with you.
Language changes, people. Even Enochian, which is strangely English in its linguistics. Who would have thunk that the angels all speak with an English grammar?
That's yeah, you can't take any of it very serious.
Well, but at the same time, you have to take it incredibly
The
serious.
work itself serious.
The work.
Yeah. The work, that's
The opus magnum.
And it makes sense for Skinner to feel that way because there's no theology around that work.
Well, there is.
I mean, there is, but it's the way he explains it of doing this plus this and this and this and this order will generate this. The way,
Yes.
it's not like
Yeah.
other traditions where.
But I
it's
hate
like,
that that's called scientific. I don't think we should refer to the occult as scientific.
Well, he actually refers to it
I
in
know,
that manner.
but we should refer to it as methodological.
Yeah, there you go. That's
It's
probably a
not
better word.
scientific. I think he'd agree with me. Occult science is such a stupid idea.
The idea of it, I think, yeah. But a well-kept diary.
It's what people said before we had real science. I just lost like 1,000 followers. Which puts me at negative 666 followers. Because God knows I have 444 followers. actually, well, that's the tagline number for my podcast, right? 444.
Mm-hmm.
Because I plan to only do. I'm gonna end it. Like, one thing I learned from the guy who initiated me into Golden Dawn, Frater C,
Mhm.
or as he's known today, Nineveh Shadrach.
No way.
That's why we're called Frater C.
No, I know him, but I didn't know him.
Nineveh Shadrach initiated me in the Golden Dawn in 1996, in November,
Wow.
in Surrey, British
I didn't realize
Columbia.
he had any GD affiliation because I know he does
He's
so much
he
gin
was-
stuff.
He's Robert Zink's adopted son.
blowing my mind. Wow.
Robert Zink's wife, Rafaela, was his girlfriend when they were both 16 in the LA Temple. And then Zink stole Rafaela from Mimo. No, Shadrach. Everyone calls his name's Mimo. Mamdou Al Day. Oh, maybe I just gained some listeners. Yeah. Mamdou Al Day, Nineveh Shadrach, Frater C, initiated me into the Golden Dawn and
Wow.
opened Temple Tahuti, which I then became the guy who ran it and all of Canada, and gave me the motto Frater Rumpuns Catene, broken of chains,
Mhm.
which of course is my outer order motto. So I've moved far beyond that 20
Sure.
years ago.
Mhm.
You know,
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea.
adepts call me Rafade.
I know he's way into gin magic. That's how I know him.
Yeah. So he initiated me and Martin Thibault and Marcel and Bjorn and everyone, all of us, from Nineveh Shadrach.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
It's a
during the
good,
war,
good piece of history.
during Bellum, like Zink would order people to go. Voldemort would order people to go spy on him in his basement and like sit outside his window and stare in at him in the night. Like Martin used to do that shit with like fucking shoot out batons ready and dressed all in black to like assassins in the night. Like the fucking shenanigans that I just
Weird.
avoided. I was like, I have ritual work to do and classes to teach. I don't have time to sit outside of some ex-adepts, our founder's apartment in you know, this is bullshit. This is the
Weird.
This is the shit that, and like I can't believe people would like. It's like, what? How can you behave this way? Like, next thing you know, you're going to be selling gold and Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean,
Martin's fully
I've
gonna
heard
listen to
I've
this.
heard many stories like that. I mean, I guess I'm lucky with Hogan's order that we just don't really have anything like that, or he hasn't taken the leadership to his head, right?
Well, it sounds like Hogan's just too busy actually giving people a good Golden Dawn experience, which is
Yeah.
the only thing that matters. Like, it's a curriculum. It's a college. Anyone who turns it into anything else is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jeremy Crow has a YouTube video where he's like, my time with the Golden Dawn cult, and then he talks about his time in Toronto with Zach, who is a student of mine. I basically almost expelled, but he was giving so much money to Zink and all of those people that he got up. And as the schism was happening and Tahuti was falling and America and Canada were splitting, I actually gave him some advice on how to like move up with Zink, and just said, you know, just play this card, and you'll get far. Because I was depressed, I was upset, and I was busy with my marriage falling apart while doing grad school. It was a fucking
Yeah.
son of a bitch, man. And you know, he had this cult experience, Jeremy Crow did, because he was with this guy Zach, who was like, people make it into a cult.
Mm-hmm.
That's their choice to make it into a cult.
Oh, totally.
It's not a cult. It's a school. You should fucking graduate and leave if you have any sense about you. Now, if you want to join an inner order because that inner order is doing really good work that actually speaks to you, I think, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, totally.
But the outer order you go through should not necessarily be the same as the inner order you then enter. I think that we should, if we could create more bridges between orders and allow, like the Sodalitas.
Mhm.
Sodalitas allows honorary adepts. Like, I can in theory become an honorary adept of the Sodalitas Mosaic Crucis, which is a traditional Golden Dawn order.
Mhm.
And that's amazing. That's how it should be. Like, we should create bridges between orders. That's what Nicholas Goodrick Clark instilled in me before he died, in the decade in which I got to know that beautiful human being, who warned us and warned us and warned us about how the occult roots of Nazism could lead to the exact same thing happening again. But sadly, he didn't live to see this. I'm sad. Sally McFaig, my mentor, who died just last November in 2019, like one of the most beautiful human fucking beings you would ever have met. I mean, they didn't get to see what's going on right now, and what's going on right now is scary.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, to quote Maynard James Keenan, the Reverend Maynard, as he said at the last show I saw him play, and I ate all the mushrooms I had because the people I had invited didn't come, so I had a gram of mushrooms for each of us, and they didn't come, so I ate all 3 grams. Throughout the entire show, I really didn't hear the music because I couldn't focus on the music, even though it was Tool.
Sure. The light
because he was talking to me so much while he was singing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Maynard just had a dialogue going with me.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
he was actually projecting and talking to me and giving me life lessons the entire fucking concert. So I couldn't really pay attention to his new songs because, you know, he had some wisdom to drop.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, at the end of it, I realized I was at a concert and he wasn't talking to me, and he was singing on stage, and I was up there listening. You know, that occurred to me eventually, but not at the time.
I think you had mentioned to me some ties to Tool and the occult.
Oh,
correct?
I can tell you so much about that. Tool and the Golden Dawn
Yeah,
specifically.
that's
Oh my
interesting.
God, this gets into.
And it's from
I'm gonna lay out
Dana
the whole
Carey,
story.
right? Dana Carey.
And Adam Jones, and they trained a guy whose girlfriend. I'm gonna tell you the whole story, but my point to finish that point is important. What was it? What was my point?
You were talking about the Tool concert, mushrooms.
Yeah, but the actual. To quote the Reverend Maynard, what he said at the beginning of that show, because he rarely speaks.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I saw him perform in Canada, he said, the only thing he said the whole concert was, "Hey, it's great to be here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Please invade our country before we purchase yours." It was so funny at the time, but now it's sort of like, anyway. What he said at this concert was, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world. Things are a bit crazy. But one way or another, it's all going to be fine. And if you know his song, Anima,
Mm-hmm.
learn to swim, learn to swim.
Yeah, totally.
Bomb's gonna fix it all soon. Mom's coming back to put it back the way it ought to be.
Totally.
Dude, if we don't get our shit together, nature's just gonna snap its fingers and we'll become just like the dinosaurs. That's why we gotta occupy Mars, eh?
Something. We're gonna run out of room.
Yeah, something. So anyway, that's that story. So do you actually want to hear about Tool and the Golden Dawn?
Yeah, I'm curious.
All right.
I think your listeners
Yeah,
would probably
so-
love to hear that.
So, no one actually knows that much, and if they do, they're not talking. But we all know that Tool functions in a rehearsal space with the Enochian tablets on all 4 walls, and they each represent one of the tablets.
Interesting. Okay.
That's cool, right?
Yeah.
Danny Carey's set up with all the symbolism, and his love of Thelema and Crowley and OT is well known. But Adam Jones is hardcore Hermeticism. As a band, they only agree and meet on equal footing in the realm of sacred geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes across from the fact that they have albums that end where each song starts in the key that the previous song's note ends on, and it goes from A to G.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
They do all sorts of stuff.
All
like
sorts
that.
of stuff.
Yeah,
They do
yeah.
so much
Their
stuff. There's a
timing,
reason
too.
it's psychedelic. The only time I ever actually took someone's advice and listened to what he said I should do, which was listen to my favorite music while doing DMT, I'd put on a Tool song. And the Beings incorporated the music. And I said to some guy, Outback Ronan, shout out to Outback Ronan on Instagram, who knows way more than me about these things. I asked him, what the hell is that going on? How can a song I'm playing in my room integrate like that? And if you haven't done a lot of DMT, you might not, this might not make sense, but like, I know you haven't done it yet. I mean,
No.
I say yet. You got a lot right here. I didn't say that. What he said was, he explained to me, like, he's like, yeah, that's right. You really, like, of course they're going to incorporate the music into the, like, they are, it shows you this mystical understanding of reality. Like this, there's no separation.
Yeah, no, you can hear it in their music for sure.
Yeah.
That's what's just cool to hear that they have ties to that, because obviously it makes sense.
Oh, it gets deeper, and it involves other bands. So I was covering my friend's band in Vancouver. He wanted me to be guitar tech, but I had my own gig going on, a Celtic gig. And I ran down, made it just in time for his last song, and then he was opening for a band called 3 Teeth.
Okay.
You know 3 Teeth? Wow, you need
Yeah.
to listen to them,
Okay.
because they are amazing. They were born rock stars, and they've resuscitated, I think, single-handedly industrial music from the era of Cam, FDM, and my buddy Gunter Schultz, who of
Okay.
course probably will lay down the guitar tracks for the stuff you and I do, you on drums, right? Like that would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
yeah. You know Gunter Schultz.
Yeah, totally.
KMFDM. Yeah. Okay, so he's my bro, and he's the one who actually told me not to get into music. Did I tell you that? He's like, when I was getting into music, he was like, "No, I think you should not get into music." I'm like, "Why, Gunter Schultz?" He's like, "Look at me. I was pop star. Now I do computer graphics." I'm like, "Das ist urgeil. Das ist lustig." He's like, "Nein, nein, das ist nicht lustig." I'm like, "Das ist ein bisschen lustig." He's like, "Ja, machst was du willst." Like, you know, fucking whatever. Do what you want. And you know, here we are today. And so Three Teeth is a band you need to check out. So they were the headliners, and they played. And the music was deep. It almost felt like Tunnels of Set, sort of Kenneth Grant kind of stuff. And I was like, it's almost like they're working through the tunnels to elevate consciousness. It's weird. And I didn't know. And then there was a weird thing where my friend, who I was with, but I was there as a journalist, so I had like all these perks. My friend came and brought a tray of shots and put it down next to me, next to the stage in the back private area. And I was like, "Oh, thanks, that's awesome." You know, so I did a shot. And then she turns around, she's like, "That was for the band." And I look up, and these huge guys are staring down on me. They're like, I'm telling you the whole story here, right? Because you're a musician, you appreciate it. They're looking at me like, and one of the guys doesn't get a shot before his set of Three Teeth. I'm like, I'm sorry. But, you know, if you're a journalist covering an event, and someone puts down a tray of shots next to you, you assume it's for you and your friends. Doesn't matter that it's on the stage, because you're backstage already, right?
Sure.
You don't think about that, like, you know.
Sure.
I was like a honored guest there already. And I looked at the man, I'm like, "I'll fix this." And I ran to the bar, I'm like, "I need 5 tequila shots." And they're like, "We're actually out of tequila." The band drank it all. I don't know, maybe not. And I was like, "Okay, give me five gin and tonics, 5 double gin and tonics, right?" Like, they're like, "That'll be $62. I'm like, "Yeah, here you go. It's Canada, so fucking bankrupt me, whatever." I brought them to the stage. I'm like, "I'm sorry." They look at me. I'm like, I'm sorry, you know. And afterwards, we're all hanging out in the back at thing. They didn't want to. Three Teeth didn't want to party with us or anything like that. We all went back to the studio and had a great night, epic night with all these film producers. You know, our crew. But there's this photo that got taken of these steampunk or cyberpunk film director Avery Fain and Kane DeLay of Left Spine Down and all these people, and the singer from Three Teeth's there, and he ended up in the back of the photo with me, and we're right there, and we're like arm in arm, and we're just like, "Hey," he's like, I'm Alexi, you know, I'm like, "I'm eloquent," and as the photo gets taken, I look at his arm, and there's a huge full color Golden Dawn color scheme tattoo of Thoth on his arm. Literally, it looks like it's straight out of the Godform book. I'm like, and he looks at me, I look at him, and it's like, I got that adept vibe. I'm like, am I looking at a fucking Hermetic adept? The singer from Three Teeth? No. I go home after the party, and I'm there early in the morning, and I'm doing a pre-post for my article that was going to come out, because I was writing for an affiliate of Rolling Stone called Rockstar Weekly, and somehow I ended up, me and someone started DMing, who posted something about Hermeticism, and I was like, I posted back, and this is a long story, but is it worth it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
So, and she posts back, and I DM quickly, just like, "Yo, that's cool." And she's like, "Yeah, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Blah blah blah." It's like, "Yeah," I'm like, actually just writing up the article covering Left Spine Down and Three Teeth. And I think the singer from Three Teeth is got some like Hermeticism background. She's like, "I'm in Mexico City, and I'm from Eastern Europe, and I was trained in Hermetic Golden Dawn magic in LA by the singer Alexis, who you're talking about and just were with tonight."
Wow.
Who was taught himself by Alex Jones from Tool and Danny Carey. I'm like, "And you're in Mexico." Her name's Shaltamira. I'm like, she's like, "Yeah." And we talked for hours. That was a long I'm like, whoa.
It makes you wonder, how many other, you know?
So this tradition's alive and well in the rock scene. And here's the funniest thing of all. I go to Berlin to lecture at a culture conference. I end up at a club that the one of the main guys Gabriel from a culture conference recommended I go to. I thought it was like actually like a spiritual yoga thing. So I had my chakra crystals in my pocket. I had my robe. I was like all ready for like a yoga with like spiritual thing ring. And I'm in this line from midnight till 3 a.m. to get into a place called Val de Renata, Wild Renata. And it's a skyscraper, a abandoned skyscraper that's basically 10, 15 stories. And I was lucky they let me in, actually. I had my elf ears on, and I was like, oh shit, everyone's dressed weird. I'm like, what is this place? And it turns out it's like the craziest all night or 2-day long, like full on 30, 40 orgy room, sex party, BDSM, dance club, everything. There's an outdoor area, there's everything. Like it's something you would imagine only in fiction, in a cyberpunk wet dream. And there's a whole other pavilion with curtains and areas where there's tarot readers and stuff, people doing all kinds of things. And I turn a corner, and she walks right out from around there with her girlfriend. She's right there. Shelter, the person I had been talking to. I'm like, Shelter. She's like, hello? Hi. I'm like, whoa. You were in Mexico when we were DMing about Alexis from Three Teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're here. She's like, and who are you? I'm like, I'm Frater C. She's like, RC. Oh, and we hugged and we talked, and it was like, whoa. I was like, somehow I knew I was going to encounter you, but how on earth is it that we're meeting at this crazy party in Berlin? And she's like, oh, come on, it's Berlin. Of course we meet in Berlin. That's how it works. And I was like, tell me about a Three Teeth and Alexi and the work. And she's like, they're doing powerful magic to work through some of the dark. It sounded like how I hear masters of Tibetan Buddhism describe dealing with demons to elevate the world consciousness.
Yeah.
I'm like, they are doing that, aren't they? She's like, yeah. I was listening to some of the recordings while I wrote up my article, and it was like super intense. So you got to check out Three Teeth.
I will. Yeah.
They broke out because Tool invited them to tour with them, and it was obviously because Alexi was being trained by Adam Jones and
wow.
in Golden Dawn stuff in LA in like an underground musician
that
version
just means
of
there's obviously a
GD
ton
train.
more out there, right? Yeah.
There's so much out there, people.
Yeah.
What a story, hey?
Oh, it's a great story.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting.
Life's fucking weird, man.
Totally. Well, in some people use occult symbolism and stuff just to use it, like I described to you in the heavy metal scene.
But some people are using it to
Or
create
actually
music
using
to
it.
change the world.
Exactly. So it's super interesting. And it also, takes away from a lot of the traditional lodges. Everyone thinks it has to be a traditional lodge, and here you've got the band Tool creating adepts out of nothing at all. I mean, maybe there's a name of something in their lodge, but it
Put that in
definitely
your pipe and smoke it, Samuel.
definitely not something you're going to find on Google and apply
I'm
online
just
for.
joking. I love Samuel. I love both the Samuels. I love Robinson, and I love Scarborough. I love everyone who's promoting Golden Dawn tradition because it fucking made my life so beautiful. So beautiful. I know there's so much bad you can say, but you can say that bad shit about the public school system, about corporations, about every fucking organization. Anytime human beings get together, fucked up shit happens. Deal with it. Let's move on.
Totally.
Let's focus on the good, right?
I do like Samuel Robinson's Pantsofer website. He's got a lot of good contributors.
I love how he rates Golden Dawn orders. I just think he needs to have a full IMDb star rating.
As far as the rating of the orders, I thought it was kind of silly.
Given what Martin did to him, man, he has a pass for me in life because Martin fucked him in the ass. Fucking tricked Zalewski into throwing him out and getting himself installed. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, it's
Who behaves this way?
But he's got a good following now, and a lot of people that can actually do a lot of translations. So
He
he's
initiated my mom with Martin into Portal in Montreal. My mom flew out there because the schism had killed Temple Tahuti. My mom flew out there, paid Martin a bunch of money, of course, and Martin treated her like shit the whole time. But Samuel was a gem.
Yeah.
Was a gem to her. She's like, if it wasn't for him being there, she's like, I think I might have died. But they put her in a Portal, which I'm glad she got to have that Portal experience before she died. She's still alive, of course, but fighting cancer. And she's a beautiful lady. And she got to go into Portal. I think that's important. My sister didn't get to do that, unfortunately. And I had to actually scepter her into Philosopher's. I don't know if you know what sceptering is. It's basically one-on-one initiations that a hierophant can do. Because they're not initiations. You're only initiated into Neophyte and Zelator. The other 3 initiations are actually advancements.
Gotcha. Okay.
You've already started the cycle of the elements in Malkut. Yeah. I won't say more about that because there's a little surprise.
No, I
around the
appreciate
corner
that.
from
I
it.
appreciate
no,
that.
no, that's another thing people get wrong about me all the time is that I actually do value the learning process of the tradition. I tell people to not look at things or not do things if it's not the right time in
Yeah,
their
I
tradition or
agree.
even in solo practice. I feel I was so lucky. Whether you think I came from a shit order or a great order, it's definitely the largest order that's ever existed.
Yeah.
And that's because Zink's a car salesman at heart. Now the FGDU has a rigorous application process, which is good. I mean, it was me and Marcel that started not allowing schizophrenics in because we're not trained to handle it, man. We're not trained to handle people who start leaving blood-filled needles on our doorstep looking for the whore of Babylon. Like that's weird shit.
And that happens.
It happened all the time.
It happens all the time in those types of studies because it unravels people.
We had a neophyte who was schizophrenic who got expelled and then waited 5 years, came back and got reinitiated. And after his initiation, I looked at him I'm like, I know you. And he's like, he looks at me, I'm like, oh. Yeah, you're gone, buddy. You're gone.
Yeah.
I don't fucking put up with any shenanigans from guys, especially against women, man. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Totally.
Fucking fuck you. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
No way. I have 2 little sisters, man. Fuck, I don't give a shit about your spiritual development if you fucking gonna fuck around with women.
Yeah, totally.
And sores
All
and
that.
grabbing asses and shit. It's not a fucking whoopsie, man. It's fucking assault.
There's no place for it.
That's
There's
why
really no
Masons don't allow women, right? To avoid whoopsies.
Well, we do actually, in your oath, there's a vow to not violate your brother's wife, kids, things like that.
It's shocking it has to be included. You'd think the 10 Commandments would have handled that.
Well, they wanted to, get that in your head. I mean, for example,
It's a moral system.
I have a lot of good friends, you know what I mean, that I can call on and whatnot, and they'll help and take care of things. But if I call a brother from my lodge right now, I'm stuck, I need a ride, I'm on my way. There's no...
Really?
I mean, with a good lodge, that's just how it is. I mean, they become if they hear you're hurting out of work, they'll contact Grand Lodge, try to get you funding. If you have a health problem, they'll try to work with you there. If your children obviously have any problems, the Shriners come in to help.
Maybe I should have stuck with it.
It was an insurance plan. That was the original purpose.
I just got you got your funeral costs covered.
Yeah,
I
your-
got that covered.
Your funeral costs are covered. And back in the
I
day...
want to be buried next to my great-grandfather, who's next to Frater C in North Vancouver, where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to fuck with those ghosts for the rest of my life. Me and Frater C can just bitch about Crowley.
No, what's a trip is that I didn't plan on moving into this town, but my great-grandmother, great-grandfather, and my grandfather are buried literally a mile over there. And I had no idea originally.
Wow.
So
You know, Chris Bennett's the reincarnation of Frater C.
seriously?
He grew up on the same street,
Oh, gotcha.
and he's definitely. I don't believe in reincarnation, but I do when it comes to Chris Bennett because he's definitely Frater C.
Smart guy. Great books.
Chris Bennett,
Yeah.
he's the best.
And he stuck his toe out there.
He's one of the most inspiring human beings I've ever met in my life, and just such a good man. He's a good fucking man, and he's a man who actually ruined his life for almost over a decade. Did you know that?
No.
By practicing black magic.
Interesting.
He almost told the story with me once, but I've heard it so many times we didn't need to podcast it. But yeah, he did black magic. He fucked up his life. Fucked it up big time,
Mm-hmm.
and so he doesn't do it anymore.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen to good friends.
I don't know if that's necessarily the same thing as left hand path. That's for you all to decide. But if you pursue evil or revenge, what do they say? Dig 2 graves.
Boldly.
That's why I have only love for Zinc and all the rest of those cocksuckers. He's my godfather. I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. Should we go do some ritual work?
I think we can. I gotta check on the kids for now. And I gotta see Kristen's gonna be coming pretty soon here, so I gotta get some food going.
We'll just bang out a little invocation of Thoth. Thanks for listening, people. Shalom. So, yeah, just so we hit that 3-hour mark. And plus, I don't think I've ever gotten to do the end of a podcast that follows up after departing to a full circle on the ground with banners of east and west, and a full, LRP, BRH.
This is the post-show wrap
Thought
up, right?
massive middle pillar. Well, you notice one of my favorite things I think in teaching the middle pillar is when you're teaching it to sometimes not let people know how long you're going to go on a single sephira.
Mm-hmm.
So like all of a sudden you noticed in Yesod we did like 3, 4, 5 vibrations for most we did four vibrations, which is a very short middle pillar actually, depending on your school of thought. But then for Yesod we did like I think almost 10 vibrations,
Yeah.
and I made sure that you didn't know, like, it's just one more, oh, just
Yeah,
one more,
yeah.
again,
Remind me like working
again.
out.
And then after you keep saying one more a bunch of times, then you say again, as if like there was never a one more, like you're you're only just starting in the, yeah, I stole the lighter.
You're good. Yeah, I noticed that. It's kind of like working out. It's like another rep,
Well,
another
I
rep.
find that when you betray expectations, it does sort of short circuit the cognitive thinking about what you're doing. It puts you into a more emotional, spiritual, kinesthetic state almost.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, oh shit, this could go on forever. I don't know what he's doing anymore. I thought we were doing a four vibration middle pillar. Now we're just like rocking and rolling on Yesod here. What's happening? And then you just go, okay, you have to relent. You have to, okay, I just got to go with it.
Yeah.
First time I did a middle pillar with like Nineveh Shadrach, like he did that to me, except he did it with me against the wall, and then leaned down so that my legs were in a seated position against the wall. We used to call that the Reichian middle pillar, after like Wilhelm Reich, I believe, because of generating orgone energy from the groin, and it was like, do that, and then he's like, vibrate each sephira 10 times, and I did, and he left. Nineveh Shadrach just left, and then he came back in, and when I was like halfway through, and my legs are like shaking and pounding the floor, I'm like,
Yeah.
and he's like, do the rest. He's like, he hears the vibration I'm at. He's like, now 20 vibrations for the rest, and I'm just like, your ego's like flailing and screaming like a little baby. But by the end of it, I walked out of that temple feeling like I was walking upon high, treading on the firmament of new. I was like raising a flashing flame with the lightning of mine eye, ever rushing on in the splendor of the daily glorified Ra. And that's how it can feel, and it's a powerful ritual, and like, it shouldn't be treated ritualistically, actually. It should be treated yogically. And if you've noticed anything, probably from what we just did, I do my rituals in a very yoga of the West kind of way.
Yeah, totally. I can see that.
I don't know. How was...
That was great for me. I mean, it was nice to do the work with someone else too. Getting pointers and shit.
It sucks to have to like fly to another...
And when I got my
state
grade, I
to do
didn't
an
get to see another initiation from that point. Like normally, like in Masonry, right after you get your initiation, you're watching the initiation happen. So you get this whole...
Why is that?
To help you understand.
But like the same night?
Sometimes if you've got more than one candidate.
Oh, I was put through with 2 other guys.
See, a guy went before me, and then I had to go through, and then I never got to go back to the temple. So it's been mostly all correspondence.
So, but they initiated you solo.
Yeah.
And in Masonry, were you initiated into your first degree solo?
In Masonry, sometimes they'll do 2 people.
Yeah, I was done with 2 other guys.
But different parts. Like the lecture gets done once for one and one for the
No,
other.
we did it all together.
Yeah, so a lot of times we'll do separate portions for different people.
It was fine. It was fine. Yeah. It was me and Martin that started actually doing GD initiations at Tahuti, and we would do multiple initiations in a night if we had multiple candidates,
Wow.
and that was crazy.
That's a long night.
But then we it's hard to do that when you have like 10, 15 people joining every month, which sometimes we had that. And
Yeah.
only a few of them are going to stick around. But,
Yeah.
I like that. If you can do it that way, that's great. I mean, I went through my Neophyte and Zealot with like 20, 30 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
Still works. Yeah. You're doing them again every time you perform them, right? Like if you do every officer role over a period of years and do them all, you get it.
Yeah,
You're-
that's it. Yeah.
It's the anamnesis. That's the theological word used to describe sort of divine recapitulation. The idea that the crucifixion is happening not today but every day
Sure.
through all of time. That's a theological idea that you see portrayed in the sacrifice of the Mass. And it's definitely a central idea to ritual work, I think. The idea that we are not doing something now, we are doing something that is already done and will be done and is done in all time.
Yeah.
We're stepping outside the time stream in a way, and it does feel that way to me when I do it.
Oh yeah, the clock just keeps going. I don't even think about it. You know, I've done meditations and they're all come out like an hour later, and I'm like, holy shit!
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even realize that it was that long, and I think that's good because that means the brain chatter isn't happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And normally I wouldn't include the analysis of the keyword when I'm working with someone in the outer order, in any outer order that has. But I think if you're going to do the invocation of Thoth, it's nice to have that little bit of spirit come in.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's probably traditionalists, or as I call them, dogmatists. I'm joking. Out there saying like none of this is right, but it's like this is magic, man. This is living magic. And to say that there's a right way to do it, I think is dangerous, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love traditionalism, and I consider myself very traditional, it's like spirituality's alive, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's got to be more than just faith alone, right? It's got to be connection. You actually have to have connection.
Faith alone is a big theological question. Hey, that's the Martin Luther issue.
Definitely.
Any thoughts, feelings, or stuff to share with people who might be getting into doing basic daily ritual work in the Hermetic GD tradition?
I mean, I obviously can't speak so much because I'm
based on things that you learned just now.
Yeah, I would say the importance of the voweling and the volume is definitely probably key.
Oh yeah, say something about volume and where you got that from and why that's relevant now.
Well, I picked it up from different students. Cicero was big on that too when I went to a couple of his workshops. Because your body's a vessel, you've got to vibrate the whole being of the body, I think, to actually be effective. Just whispering rituals isn't enough for the GD system. Maybe other systems you could be more timid.
Well, it's all working towards what we call the great voice. And the great voice is, for lack of a better word, inaudible.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you could get there without voluming your way there for over many years.
Well, and I've seen lots of different people perform similar, banishings and whatnot.
Sure.
And such a variety of
Taking a hazel wand and just drawing a circle around at Pantheacon where I met you,
Yeah.
Mother Bear. People came up to me afterwards like, "Whoa, when you did that, I really felt it." I was like, "Yeah, that's good. That's
what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
why wouldn't you?" And like, I wasn't smuggling in any extra techniques.
Mm-hmm.
I was just taking a wand handed to me in that tradition and drawing a circle. It works.
Mm-hmm.
It works.
Definitely.
It's no pentagram ritual, but to each to their own tradition. And if you want to mix and match, mix and match. But I do think it's important to work with tradition.
Yeah, I think with each tradition.
The volume of vibrations thing and the tone. I think it's important to harmonize in a way, again, not necessarily harmonize, but as musicians we would actually call it doubling sometimes.
Sure.
Because it does create that sort of effect.
Definitely. That I could.
First time I
definitely tell.
recorded Uilleann pipes, the engineer kept putting like echo or reverb on it, and it wasn't really working. Obviously, we put a little verb on it,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Like,
Some
a
space.
little love,
Yeah.
a bit of the suck dial. You know what that means?
Yeah,
That's for those musicians out there. But what I eventually was like, it's just not sounding right. Maybe that's because I had a shitty reed in the Uilleann pipes. But eventually I said, hey, because I knew a bit of Pro Tools, and I said, try slapping on a doubler. That's a very specific sound effect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A doubler,
Sure.
It actually can make a sound feel, inorganic a bit, or plastic.
Sometimes, yeah.
And it did, but it worked just well. And that's why you can hear that on the Drunken Priest of Donegal.
Gotcha.
And that's a doubler with a touch of reverb on the Uilleann pipes, and I liked it. It had the right effect.
I also noticed.
It almost had an auto-tuney sort of effect.
Yeah, no, it definitely it gives it some. It fills it up quite a bit more. I mean, I did notice that when we were, going over different vowel sounds, and you were kind of playing with the number, that we were using, how as it pushed, I liked how the pitch escalating also creates that kind of a build-up atop the volume. That's kind of neat.
Well, in the beginning episodes of this podcast, I put a whole set of me doing ritual work on it. Me doing LBRBRH with analysis of the keyword sub voce.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spoil it for people who are holding off. I know you've read ahead, of course, and you know all that stuff, so it's no surprise there. And I do, because for me it's one of those powerful rituals. But when I joined the GD, that was when they heard I was doing that already. They're like, "Yeah, you got to stop that." And I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "Because you're invoking spirit, and you haven't been initiated for spirit yet." And I was like, "Okay." I joined the GD because I had that experience with Don Craig's self-initiation that I told you about that it didn't go right. So I was like, I'm happy to do whatever I'm told, because clearly I was messing around with powers I cannot control. And as we used to say in our order, the last thing you want to do is become a playground of forces you cannot control.
Oh, definitely.
You know, if we want to mess with someone, we tell them to just like, you should just go sit down and rock back and forth and chant, I'm a playground of forces I cannot control. I'm a playground of forces I cannot control. I'm a playground of forces, And people go like, why would we do that? It's like, if you're going to do it wrong, you may as well go all the way.
That's great.
Also, I also loved, one thing I love about my godfather, good old Roberto Voldemort, was he'd call me up, and if I overslept and wasn't making good use of my time, he would call me up, and I'd answer the phone, and I'd be like, it's like 10 a.m., and I've overslept, whatever that means, but, whatever, it's him. And I would pick him, and he'd be like, Frater, only demons sleep during the day. I'd be like, good morning, Frater. He'd be like, yes. How are you doing? How's it going? I'm like, all right, I'm getting up now, Eventually, he actually put me on a thing where I had to like write out what I did every hour of every day in a diary and show it to my supervising adept every day.
Wow.
What I did all day from morning, and I had to be up by 8. And some days I'd be so tired because we'd be doing like ritual work and initiations or teaching classes, or I'd be reading, studying for grad school, or spending time with my fiance. Any number of things. Once in a while, I even saw my family or played Dungeons and Dragons once in a blue fucking moon, I was 20, so I was like, I wasn't living a normal life.
Sure.
But I'd wake up when he told me to at 8, and I'd just sort of read Lord of the Rings in the study hall of Temple Tahuti as I slowly tried to stay awake through the mornings, which is so hard when you're doing ritual work till 4 a.m.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
But it was a good growing up experience. I did need to grow up, and they let me in the order to help me grow up and save me from a situation that they probably knew I needed it. Right?
Sure.
If you show up knocking on the door, doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, chances are you're meant to be there. And I was a long journey to find that door.
Yeah.
How do you find the Thoth energy?
That was interesting. Yeah, I mean, it felt like someone had turned on like the brightest fluorescent light that I've ever when your eyes are closed and like real bright light. It was just like basking over me and sort of made up sort of like a reddish kind of a figurey shape in it. But I tried not to read too much into it and just experience, since it was the first time I was exposed to that energy.
I like what Sabrina the Witch says, who I podcast with, right? She comes from a spiritualist tradition, actually, of like that whole, like from her parents and shit. She really comes from it. And she says she likes to recite from that tradition that they say there's no wrong impressions, only wrong interpretations.
Sure.
So like your experience is your experience, but what you think about it might not be the best. However, but the experience is good.
Yeah. Oh, the experience
like
was great.
Says, that's the mysteries.
Yeah, there's definitely nothing malefic or anything like that. It was definitely just powerful force.
Well, it's a nice space you have down there with your recording studio with a magic circle on the ground, even though the magic circle's pointing in a different direction as the banner of the east and the west. That's very David Griffin of you, bro. Oh, snap. Don't go there, girlfriend. I went there.
Yeah, no, it's good to get that stuff pointed out. You know what I mean? Because I did the circle later after I had the banners up and all that.
No,
that's all the little stuff like that. That's important.
I would either redo the circle or change your banners.
I'll change the
agree with the circle, even if the banners are in the actual compass point correctly. I don't know what they are.
I think they are, because I remember actually using.
Well, then you might redo the circle to
yeah.
agree with the banners and the compass point, if possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
I'll do
I would
that.
do that. But I like the circle because it has the names on it. It's like, you know.
It's kind of like a study circle.
Yeah, it's a study circle. That's great. I wish I could have done that on my circle.
Mm-hmm.
Or in my childhood bedroom. If I had painted the carpet, I think my parents would have been upset.
I let very few people down
Of course,
for that reason.
With me making those vibratory sounds like 3 to 4 hours a day,
Oh yeah.
no one wanted to come in my room.
Yeah.
My sister's friends would be like, step inside to ask me a question about homework because she's 3 years younger. So when I was a senior, she was a freshman,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd like ask me the question. They'd keep looking around. Everything was organized pristinely in my room, but they'd be like, "I gotta leave." I'd be like, "Why?"
Mhm.
And they're like, "It feels weird in here. There's something going on in here." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And they'd hear me vibrating from after school on work, right? So they knew somehow I was fucking wacko.
Crazy.
But we're all in Waldorf school, so what can you fucking say?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
You're literally in a Rosicrucian school founded by an occultist.
Well, like I said,
They don't say that on the brochures, but it's still true.
Yeah, I don't bring too many folks into the studio for that reason, right?
What
Because
school did you go to? Oh, a Rosicrucian one.
Rosicrucian school.
But like not one of the ones that says it is, just the ones that secretly is.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's Waldorf.
Like Waldorf has smuggled in occultism into the world globally in a way that is so true to the Rosicrucian current, it boggles the fucking mind. It's
Yeah,
the
I
largest
agree.
private school system in the world.
Yeah, highly successful too.
Annie Lennox called her band the Eurythmics because of doing eurythmy in Waldorf school every day from grade 1 to grade 12. Eurythmy is the one thing you have to do every day from grade 1 to grade 12. It's the weirdest weird dance form you could ever see with these flowing silk things and all this stuff. And eventually I looked into it and I was like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by, I think, these 2 deaf girls or blind girls or something. And do you know what it was actually designed as? Fucking weightlifting for the aura.
Wow.
Wow. Guess what, folks? There's weightlifting for the aura, and it's called eurythmy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have these diagonal shapes and like dancing your name, as they joke in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But there's weightlifting for the aura.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I think we should do in the Golden Dawn, it's incorporate eurythmy. Because even the
Interesting.
way they move, like you're moving through water, is a really good way to move in ritual work, like you're underwater. Like that's
Mhm.
sort of it. It's not necessary, and it's not always even appropriate, but it sort of invokes the astral current because you're moving like you're moving through this astral fluid, as we like to call that which we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Even in Masonic work, the same thing. Slow, methodic. Everything's
contemplative.
well. Yeah, contemplative. You know, it's like you're approaching it like it's an ominous thing, and so you need to slowly, move about it. And I think that also helps with the brain too, to quiet it down. Being able to slow down a little bit, let everything kind of calm back down.
Yeah. And you didn't get a vocal message from Thoth yourself.
I didn't.
You know, and I want to say something about that because you don't always. And even myself, like I had to like literally paradigm shift and pretend you weren't even there
Mm-hmm.
for me to be able to open up and access that connection and
Mhm.
ask and get answers. I had to. It's really weird. It goes back to like meditation 1 and just mental training in general. Like you need to do that. That is the stuff that's the most boring is so truly the most important.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
I mean, it might be like a fucking, I don't know, I might be a scattered, flawed human being 99.9% of the time, just another fucking douchebag twatting around the world, but when I do the work, like, training kicks in, intention kicks in,
Mm-hmm.
purpose, or as they say in the seminary, mission, church, and ministry, that sense of creating the holy in you. And it's not now, it's all times, all at once, anamnesis.
Mm-hmm.
And something happens, man, something fucking happens. And you can talk to things, and they can tell you things, and they can do things for you.
I mean, I've definitely spoken to different currents. I just usually the first time I'm exposed to them, I see them,
Oh.
and then eventually, as I
yeah.
get more comfortable with that entity, then I can start to.
We would have portal people, because that's when you're given the Thoth invocation, the order I was trained in. We would have portal people do Thoth invocations every day, along with our esoteric rosary.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't call it that, we call it something else, but I can't say the name. And to counterbalance it, because the rosary is very icy and very Isis. Next time we'll do Isis, yeah.
The rosary.
You and me will do Isis next time.
Okay.
And we'll just have a sob circle jerk. I love everyone.
The mother.
That's why I Temple Tahuti in Vancouver and then Temple of Isis, Mighty Mother in LA. It was this sort of friendly rivalry, but it was a rivalry of energy, because we'd go down there and it was powerful. Doing work with all the adepts down there was powerful, but it was Isian. It was always very smooth. Like, they weren't as precise, they weren't bombastic, they weren't, whereas, like, you know, they'd be like, Cobbs, Pack, Conks, Packs, light, in, extension. And that's it was powerful indeed. But, like, you go up to Tahuti, we were just, like, everything was bigger. Our pillars were, like, this much around.
Yeah, totally.
And they were, like, 15 feet tall and this huge thing. And the dioceses were huge, and, like, you fucking need two people to move every dice, until me and Martin were eventually like, you flip it like this, you put your slam, you know, we'd get it done, be like, boom. Like, in this huge ass temple, and we would be like, everything was like electrical Tahuti current, you know, powerful in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't subtly powerful, it was like, you know, Cobbs, pack, conks, packs, light in, extension. You know, boom. You'd be like, yes, I am an initiate.
Yeah, different. You know, you sort of create your own egregores with your temples as well.
Amen.
Right? Yeah. I think as long as you're giving effort, it's important. I mean, because I've seen so many poor, you know, Masonic performances where it's just verbatim coming from the head out the mouth, no intention. And when I started doing the speeches, I you know, someone came to me and was like, 85-year-old guy came up to me, and he's like, I've probably seen, like, you know, 300 initiations in my career. I have never ever seen the charge delivered like that, and that is just amazing.
Really?
Because I approached it like
Magician.
You know what I mean? Like, gave inflections when it meant, you know. It's boring to see someone just spit regurgitated, you know, info right back at you like a robot. You know, maybe some people like that. I don't know, but I like intention.
That's why it takes so long to do the academic commentaries I do, because sometimes I'll just get through a sentence, but most often I've reread it and read it, and I try and say it like it makes sense, like you're really hearing it. Because when you just read a dry academic essay, it really can, most of the time, it doesn't sound like someone's talking to you and sharing an idea.
No,
It
exactly.
sounds like, you know, they're telling you about nuclei and, you know, describing something scientific almost, even in the most liberal of arts. But
Definitely.
if you can give it some style, give it some flavor, and sometimes I even don't erase my mistakes and just re-say them, just to give it that sense of, these are ideas that a human being is having based on a lifelong devotion to this field and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Hear what they're saying as a human being.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing with the academic stuff. I mean, I'm hemorrhaging followers and likes. I don't give a shit. I'm shadow banned anyway. Who cares? If there's one thing you can say for anyone who goes into 5-6, it's like, you don't get to decide what your life is anymore. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
You get to live the summum bonum, perfect wisdom and true happiness, sure. I get to wake up with that every day, but I don't necessarily get to decide what happens to me in life.
Definitely.
It feels that way. That's how the true will feels. But at the same time, like Crowley, Aleister Crowley says, when you're really doing what you're meant to be doing, which in many ways, and what the invocation we just did confirmed for me again, you know, Thoth often bitch slaps the fuck out of me But this time he actually gave me some. He was very comforting, and like,
Good.
and I don't like to not to be silent. I don't like not to be silent. But in here, I'll share a little bit. When you overshare, you can feel the cutoff above you.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I just fucked up.
Yeah.
Where's my higher self whispering to me? Oh, it's gone for like 6 months, a year, 5 years. Oops, I fucked up. I said something I shouldn't have said, and now my higher self is not going to talk to me for a little while. That's fucking happens, man.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
But when you're like with the stuff I'm doing with the Celtic mysteries and everything else, it's like a ball is rolling that I can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
If it kills me, it has no qualms about that. No qualms in the process. But there's a power in that. There's a power in that, and
Sure.
I honor that. I have to. Otherwise, I'm probably dead.
Sure.
Hey, doggy.
I mean, look what it did for.
This guy's flopped down.
Look what the system did for like Damon Eccles and guys like that. What I mean?
Damien?
Damien.
I don't know. There's a lot of controversy on that guy.
There is, and
I can't watch his YouTube videos because neither my iPhone nor my iMac, and yes, I know my friends and students have chastised me. Well, if you're going to invest in Mac, what do you fucking expect? I'm like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But all the devices I have currently are given to me because anytime everything else gets fucking stolen. But like, I can't actually hear Damien Eccles shit even with headphones on because of the volume level on his videos, so I can't actually hear what he says.
Him, yeah.
No, well, I only have one functioning ear from the last several round of assaults.
I mean, as far as his his history and all that, I don't speak or condone anything, but I think that what he said.
My
is
understanding
that
is actually he was released because of DNA evidence because they couldn't actually confirm that he did what he was accused of. I don't actually know.
He still to this day claims he was a part of it.
He was
and
a part
he was
of it?
stupid.
That he did it,
Yeah.
but he didn't bite off the kid's testicles.
But he thinks that it was a blessing for him because he got almost suicidal in prison until we started doing the work.
Yeah.
And he claims that it saved his life in the process.
It's a big question we have facing us as human beings, I think, right now in the world. The question of, is there a path for redemption when we make a mistake? Is cancel culture something we should uphold as a permanent reality for those we feel have misstepped, even in the slightest or even unintentional ways? Or should we have a path for redemption? I think we should have a path for redemption. Anyone who fucking claims to be Christian better fucking admit there's a path to redemption.
Definitely.
I'm not going some Southern grace walk theory on you here. I don't know if you know what that is, but let's not get into it. But the path, and we need to start maybe defining it as a society.
As a
Society.
Yeah.
What that path is. Maybe it shouldn't be a willy-nilly, just let them be forgiven no matter what. As we know from Christian and Catholic theology, you don't actually get forgiven until you do the penance prescribed to you. You go tell a priest in confession, and I had this happen when I was doing that stuff. If they said they did something like, I mistreated my wife, I didn't tell her the truth, I was dishonest, and I didn't show up for her, whatever. It's like, not just say 3 Hail Marys and 4 Our Fathers. It's also sometimes, it's best to also, like, you have to do this. Go take your wife out for something, a dinner you never mentioned, or tell her that she has to decide the next vacation. The priest will sometimes now say that to you. And I love that kind of training going on in seminaries, because that's good. You're forcing the person to go out and make better in their life. And then they're forgiven. You don't do that, you're fucked. You're fucking fucked. If you're part of that religion, you're not forgiven. That means you're going to hell. Totally. And I don't believe any of that shit. I agree with I agree with the Jesuits who pray that no souls go to hell and that there is no hell. There's a lot of popular Jesuit prayers that actually are like, I pray that no one ever goes to hell, and if anyone does, I pray therefore that there is no hell. That's crazy. I think that's from Hearts on Fire, Prayers of the Jesuits. For all my Catholic fans out there, I know there's one or negative 3 of you out there. I don't know who the hell listens to this thing, but I appreciate the fact that when we hit up a live stream last night, a couple people, some of the first thing they said was, "I appreciate what you're doing." And it's like, that's nice.
Awesome.
That's nice. Occultism is a thankless fucking path.
Totally.
I remember sitting on a school bus going home from high school one day and looking at everyone heading off to do this or that or the other thing, and no one invited me to shit. And I pulled up my Dion Fortune book and I read the sentence, and the first paragraph of where I was at was like, "The path of the occultist is a lonely path, and one that will be thankless, and ultimately lead to perhaps complete isolation from the rest of the world." I was like, bring it on. Bring it on. Of course,
Totally.
fast forward 25 years and I'm like, but hey,
Mm-hmm.
when we made our bed, we have to sleep in it.
That's exactly it. And you can't turn back.
No.
I think it's always interesting when you see these guys that have, practiced all this occult, learned a bunch of stuff, and then they renounce it all. And you're like, how do you just sew the curtain back up that you peeled back? I think that's what the movie Eyes Wide Shut's all about. I mean, once you open that door,
Oh, interesting.
you can't stop thinking about all that stuff. I mean, it's like you open it up and there's no going back. And I think that the rigorous people keep going down the road, you know what I mean? And some people just get, like an oven, have a bad experience and move on, and they live in fear of it the whole rest of their life. I don't know the exact answer, but you do see it quite often. These guys that get involved in orders and stuff, that denounce it all, and all there is just Jesus.
Well, Stoddard. You read Stoddard?
No.
Light Bearers of Darkness?
No. I've heard of it, but not.
You've heard of it, okay. Yeah, because she was in the Alpha and Omega and wrote this famous book. And actually, Zinky Poo got a copy of it, and he made me and Marcel sit there and transcribe it from hand because he was so worried that it would be lost for all time. And we were both like, it's probably going to be really accessible in the future. He wanted us to transcribe it so he could release copies of it, because all he had was a photocopied facsimile, as you say. A facsimile. Facsimile. That's all right. As I said, all cultists say some words weird. I don't know what words I say weird, but I'm sure someone will point it out after this.
I'll point some out when I hear one.
Yeah, forgive me. I say processes instead of processes. Forgive me.
Processes.
Processes. It's because I do English good. Because English is my fantastic. To quote Andy Dwyer from Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, dude. Good show.
That's my bedtime, sleepy time show.
Yeah, I watch out here a lot too.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Fucking
Yeah.
Ron Swanson.
Oh, dude, I love fucking, what's his name? Oh, Jesus. Paul Rudd in that.
Yeah, he's
Paul
good.
Rudd in Parks is so good.
Yeah, he does do a good job.
What a genius show. I've watched Space Force twice now since it's come out.
I saw it
meant to
in
be
the
the
queue,
new
but I haven't
Office.
seen it yet.
Oh, it's great. There's this scene with John Malkovich you have to see. He's like, fuck you. And the guy's like, fuck you. He's like, fuck you. And he's like, fuck you. Fuck you. He goes on as only John Malkovich can.
Sure.
And it's just ad nauseum. It's so brilliant. It's just it's fucking Malkovich on a TV show. Whoever thought that you would see John Malkovich on a TV show?
Yeah,
That's how
seriously.
good TV is. I don't know what the fuck happened in movies, man.
Yeah, it's
They
all
just
remakes and stuff.
2 hours of bullshit most of the time.
CGI.
Yeah. All right, we'll turn this off. Thanks, folks. Love you.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive. Are you thinking more about how to tighten up your budget these days? Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed in 2020. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations.